Chapter 1592. The bronze gates were over 1,000,000 feet tall, and they were like two small continents that stood between heaven and earth. They were extremely spectacular, and they struck one with a sense of invisible pressure as they approached, striking one with a sense of insignificance. And Lin and the others were like ants trying to push open a gate. No, they weren't even ants. They were like microscopic organisms trying to push open a gate. However, that wasn't a problem. And Lin was confident that he could slice open a divine mountain over 1,000,000 feet tall with a single strike of his sword. Pushing open a bronze gate over 1,000,000 feet tall would be a little difficult. But it shouldn't be impossible, right? However, he discovered that he had been far too naive when he tried to push open the gate. This bronze gate over 1,000,000 feet tall was no ordinary bronze gate. The extermination team was working together to push open the bronze gate, but it didn't budge in the slightest. That was completely abnormal. If this were a normal bronze gate over 1,000,000 feet tall, any Tao integration stage, super mighty figure would be able to push it open with all their might. What's going on? There's something wrong with this gate. Su Xiaolan was perplexed. How about we blow it up instead of pushing it? Xianyuan Cheng suggested. Everyone agreed with Xianyuan Cheng's suggestion. Xianyuan Cheng didn't think that his idea would be accepted by everyone. An excited smile appeared on his handsome face as a sense of satisfaction welled up in his heart. Thus, everyone began their journey of blowing up the gate. Boom, 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 rumble, 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 bam, 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 bang, 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 PFFF, PFFF, PFFF after a series of extremely violent explosions. However, the bronze gate remained completely unscathed. Everyone was in even greater despair this time. What's going on? This isn't a bronze gate. How can there be such a hard bronze gate? Xianyuan Cheng scratched his head with a defeated expression as he stared at the gargantuan bronze gate before him. Who would have thought that we wouldn't be able to close this gate after destroying our enemies? How tragic. Cassidy was unable to accept this outcome. The Celestial Arch activated his omniscient eye to conduct an analysis, and said, "The bronze gate seems to have fused as one with heaven and earth, and it's secured and protected by an absolutely powerful law." Then he turned his gaze in another direction, where there were two colorful energy pillars that reached the sky. Perhaps breaking the gate posts is the key. We also blew up the gate post, but it didn't work. Su Qianyin said softly, "Logically speaking, even with the power of the heavenly earth god, Chunqin shouldn't be afraid. So why can't he break through it?" And Lin was a little perplexed. Chunqin was also at his wit's end. He flew towards the colorful energy pillar and gently touched it. Then he felt a mysterious power that was frantically absorbing the power in his body. Chunqin immediately retracted his hand, his expression extremely grave. "Sure enough, there's something wrong with this colorful energy pillar," the handsome youth said. He pondered for a moment, as if thinking about something. Suddenly he turned his gaze to Enlin and said, "Enlin, come and touch it too." "Huh, I have to touch it too?" And Lin was given a massive fright. From Chun Chen's intense reaction, it was quite clear that there was something wrong with this colorful energy pillar. Why was he asking Enlin to touch it? This was like a person who had accidentally fallen into a pit, only to suddenly tell their friend outside of the pit, "Hey, why don't you try falling in as well?" What a joke! And Lin's heart was filled with rejection. However, he looked at Chun Chen's serious and earnest expression, and Lin hesitated for a moment before flying over. He was just touching a pillar. What was the big deal? He didn't believe that he could get pregnant just by touching a pillar. And Lin took a deep breath before pressing his palm against the pillar. A burst of power immediately surged toward Lin before quickly dissipating. And Lin blinked as if he were touching an ordinary pillar. He cocked his head to the side and turned to look at Chin Chin, as if to ask, "What now?" An ecstatic expression appeared on Chen Chen's face. "You're fine. You're fine. This is fantastic." And Lin's expression darkened. So you don't even know if I'm going to be fine? Chen Chen forced himself to calm down, but the scorching light in his eyes became even more intense as he looked at Enlin. Enlin, try unleashing a darkness-type spell technique to attack the colorful energy pillar, Chen Chen instructed. Enlin refused to comply. What did you discover? Hurry up and tell me, or I won't do it. Rumble, a series of violent booms erupted throughout heaven and earth. The power of chaos surged violently within the shattered passageway between the two worlds. The self-preservation of heaven and earth caused the spatial rift to gradually close up. Chen Chen yelled in a panicked voice, "Hurry! The spatial rift between the two worlds is starting to close up. Our top priority is to push the gate into the chaotic turbulence. I'll explain everything to you after that." As long as the gate remained, the heavenly human tribe would be able to reconstruct the passageway between the two worlds based on the coordinates of the gate on the Tai Chu continent. If they lost the gate, the coordinates would disappear, and the passageway between the two worlds would disappear, making it far more costly for the heavenly human tribe to reconstruct the passageway between the two worlds. And Lin was naturally aware of the severity of the situation. He had just used the power of the heavenly gods instead of any darkness-type spell techniques to destroy the gate. Now that Chen Chen had suggested it, he had no choice but to use it. "Little Xia!" And Lin called out as his evil-slaying sword flew out of its scabbard, drawing a beautiful arc through the air before landing in his hand, upon which a vast and domineering dark sword, true, intent soared into the sky. Evil sword technique, royal divine monarch. And Lin slashed his evil-slaying sword toward the colorful pillar of energy over 1,000,000 feet in length. Inky black sword intent instantly obscured the entire sky, extending for over 50 kilometers. It was as if the paramount aura of a divine monarch had erupted from the sword as it slashed through the air in a black arc bam. The pillar, which seemed to have existed for countless years, was suddenly penetrated by the black sword intent. The black sword intent continued onward, and the pillar seemed to wail with anguish before cracking open. Whoosh! The dark black sword aura sliced through the energy pillar that reached the clouds in half. Everyone's eyes widened as they stared blankly at the scenes unfolding before their eyes. It really did get sliced open. My God, we weren't able to break through it, even with our combined powers. Master is so powerful. God and his bad asterisk SS. Sun Yuluo, Xinyuan Cheng, White Spirit Snake, and the others all exclaimed with excitement and elation as they stared at the scenes unfolding before their eyes. And Lin continued and slashed his sword toward the other energy pillar. The other energy pillar also crumbled violently under Lin's attack. The two bronze doors let out a creaking sound, which changed due to the collapse of the pillars. Everyone, push the bronze gates into the space outside. Chin Chin yelled with excitement. The extermination team yelled in unison as they pushed the gates with excitement. The bronze gates that they had been unable to move last time were now being pushed into the shattered space. The shattered space slowly closed. The southern heavenly gate no longer existed. Chapter 1593. The southern heavenly gate had completely disappeared. There were only 2 shattered pillars left in this world. The energy fluctuations emanating from the pillars had disappeared into the chaotic turbulence. As for the bronze gate, it had already disappeared into the chaotic turbulence. Everyone looked at the scene in front of them, and their hearts were in turmoil. The southern heavenly gate that has stood for several decades has finally been broken by us. Sun Yuluo stared at the empty southern heavenly gate with a slightly dazed expression. I can't believe this is all real. Merlin was also in disbelief. It really wasn't easy, but we did it. Su Qianyun's dreamy blue eyes were already slightly red, and an indescribable sense of accomplishment and lingering fear welled up in her heart, making her want to cry for some reason. There's a saying on the Tai Chu continent that the heavenly gate is unbreakable. I really want all of those living beings to see this for themselves. Black Spirit Snake, spoke with a smile. Su Xiaolan turned toward Enlin with a faint smile. We have to thank a certain person for making such a bold decision. It was exactly because of this decision that we were able to achieve such an astonishing feat. When the others heard this, they suddenly came to a realization. It was indeed someone who played the most crucial role in this matter. When the entire world thought that it was impossible to break through the heavenly gate, he was the first person to step forward and confidently say that he was going to break through all obstacles. Regardless of whether it was Su Qianyun, Xianyuancheng, the Celestial Arch, or Qin Qin, all of them turned to look at Enlin. That's right, it was Enlin's inexplicable confidence that had infected them and made them accompany him on this adventure. In the end, they really did achieve such an impossible feat. If anyone else had invited them to destroy the heavenly human tribe, they would have slapped them in the face without hesitation. However, this was Enlin, a legendary figure who had made the impossible possible over and over again, so they chose to believe him. Regardless of whether it was as a member of the 4-9 Immortal sect or as a friend of the sect leader, Enlin always had a kind of magic that could make people around him choose to trust him. Perhaps some people wouldn't dare to believe him, but after experiencing so many face slaps, they would definitely be conquered by Enlin very quickly. Black Spirit Snake, White Spirit Snake, and the Fifth Sage were all quite surprised to see this. Enlin is the founder of the extermination team. Black Spirit Snake was astonished. She had thought that such a bold decision would be made by the Celestial Arch or Qin Qin. Who would have thought that it would be Enlin? However, when she thought of Enlin's past experiences, she felt relieved. Enlin had always been like this, going against the heavens. Oh, Senior Enlin is so awesome. White Spirit Snake's eyes lit up with reverence. Enlin spoke in a modest manner. You don't have to look at me like that. I was only the founder of this operation. Everyone worked together to complete this mission. Without any of us, this mission wouldn't have been able to be as perfect as it was today. All of the extermination team members were filled with a sense of accomplishment upon hearing this. All of them had joined the extermination team with the determination to die. They had already sacrificed enough courage and strength for the survival of the human race. Therefore, they fully deserved this honor. And Lin turned toward the graceful vermilion bird with a smile on his face. Of course, our vermilion bird princess also contributed greatly. You're also a member of our extermination team, so the human race won't forget your contributions. Huh, do I count? The 9-colored divine vermilion bird faltered slightly with elation in her heart. She was struck by a sense of accomplishment, as if she and Enlin had accomplished something world-class. However, she suddenly came to her senses a moment later. Enlin, don't drag me down with you. The southern Heavenly Wing Nation's attitude toward the heavenly human tribe was neutral. Wah, you've screwed me over. You be *starred. You're such a jerk. Everyone burst into raucous laughter, and Lin also scratched his head sheepishly. Su Xiaolan looked up at the vermilion bird with a faint smile on her face, and she felt like she was quite adorable. The image of the vermilion bird princess risking her life to escape with Enlin in her arms was still fresh in her mind, and it was exactly because of this that she was quite fond of the vermilion bird princess. Under the starry sky, the extermination team's joyful laughter reverberated through the air, and the atmosphere was unprecedentedly relaxed. After experiencing a battle of life and death together, everyone had become a lot closer to one another. Even the Fifth Sage and Xianyuancheng, who had only known each other for a short period of time, were discussing the power of the explosive fist in a harmonious manner. Of course, the main point of their discussion was how to handle the relationship between the southern Heavenly Wing Nation and the Heavenly Human Tribe. If all of the Heavenly Human Tribe forces had been destroyed, then things would be easier to handle. After all, there were no witnesses. However, the Heavenly Earth God had escaped. He had witnessed the vermilion bird princess risking her life to save Enlin and Su Xiaolan, then attacking the Heavenly God in the end. The situation was completely different now. It could even be said that the Vermilion Bird Princess had indirectly expressed the Southern Heavenly Wing Nation stance. The bird tribes of the Southern Heavenly Wing Nation were very likely to be targeted by the Heavenly Human Tribe. The Vermilion Bird Princess was very distressed by this. At the time, Anlin and Su Xiaolan were both about to die, and she didn't think too much about it. All she wanted to do was save them. Now that she thought back to it, she realized just what a huge mistake she had made. This was a mistake that could even threaten the survival of her entire race. There was no good ending for going against the heavens. She was very remorseful about this, and a few of her beautiful feathers had fallen off from her body. Everyone discussed the Vermilion Bird Princess situation in earnest. In the end, they could only come up with two very exasperated solutions. The 9-colored divine vermilion bird could either join the kingdom of the 9 States United Army with the bird tribes of the Southern Heavenly Wing Nation. The other option was for the 9-colored divine vermilion bird to officially announce that she was no longer a part of the Southern Heavenly Wing Nation's Sun Tree forces. She would disassociate herself from the Southern Heavenly Wing Nation. If the Heavenly Human Tribe had any objections, they could come and find her. After that, she could find a safe place to hide and wait for everything to come to an end. Alternatively, she could join the 4-9 Immortal sect and have fun with everyone. The Vermilion Bird Princess thought about it for a moment and decided that the second option was more viable. As for joining the 4-9 Immortal sect and have fun with everyone, did they really think she was an idiot? The Vermilion Bird Princess was a proud and carefree person. She was not going to risk her life to fight the Heavenly Human Tribe with the 4-9 Immortal sect. What a joke! She would never do such a thing. Chapter 1594. The Vermilion Bird Princess chose to leave the Southern Heavenly Wing Nation and find a place to hide for now. She would only reappear after the human race was eradicated, or after the Heavenly Human Tribe and the Heavenly Gods were eradicated. Everyone expressed their understanding of the 9-colored divine vermilion bird's decision. The Vermilion Bird Princess was quite good at hiding. There was no place she couldn't go. After taking care of the Vermilion Bird Princess, Anlin turned to Chin Chin again. "Can you tell me my secret now? Why was I able to break through those 2 colorful energy pillars?" There were so many people present, but Chen Chen had asked him to use a dark-type spell technique. Everyone knew that Chen Chen definitely knew something about Anlin. Everyone turned to look at Chen Chen with curiosity in their eyes. Chen Chen's eyes flashed, and he fell silent. An expectant expression appeared on Anlin's face as he looked at Chen Chen. "You promised me that you would tell me my secrets after I destroyed all of these pillars." Chen Chen blinked with a sincere expression. But I want to go back on my word now." Anlin. Anlin was dumbstruck. Never would he have thought that this would be the response he was getting. "You're the second heavenly disciple of the heaven-crushing sect. How can you go back on your word?" Anlin was astonished. "I'm just a normal person." Chin Chin heaved a forlorn sigh. "Do I not even have the right to go back on my word as a human?" Anlin, a big shot was putting on a pitiful expression. Did he have any shame? Anlin felt like he was about to burst into laughter. He really wanted to beat Chin Chin up, but he was no match for him. How could he not feel about this? Chen Chin hesitated momentarily upon seeing Anlin's expression, but he still couldn't help but say, "There's no harm in telling you, but I hope you can keep this a secret in case some bad karma arises." He suddenly unleashed a halo of light as he spoke, which enshrouded himself and Anlin within. This was Chin Chen's own world, a spotless land. Su Xiaolan, the celestial arch, and the others were suddenly unable to see Chin Chin and Anlin clearly. It was as if a layer of mosaic had been censored over their faces, and they couldn't even hear their voices. "Aha! How can this be?" The Vermilion Bird Princess was eagerly anticipating this earth-shattering secret, but the two of them were whispering about it in secret. This was driving her crazy. Everyone felt as if they were holding back a mouthful of blood. If you don't want them to know, then don't say it in public. I have a big secret, but I'm not going to tell you. I'm only going to tell Enlin. It really makes people want to vomit blood. Su Xiaolan, on the other hand, was very calm. She knew that as long as she asked Enlin wouldn't hide anything from her unless it was an extremely special situation, so she was very confident. Enlin entered Chun Chen's spotless land, and he suddenly felt as if Chun Chen had become extremely holy and mighty, as if he were the paramount god of heaven and earth, someone who would not tolerate any blasphemy. This was a very familiar feeling, and Lin came to a sudden realization. Wasn't this the same feeling that Tina had given him after he entered the divine mirror world? Which meant that in this spotless land, Chen Chen was the heavens. The fact that a spotless land could appear on the Tai Chu continent was extremely astonishing. This proved that Chen Chen's own world could already interfere with the reality of the Tai Chu continent. I'm talking to you here, and no one else can hear me. Chen Chen's expression suddenly became extremely serious. I'm going to tell you your secret, and I hope you can bury it in your heart forever. If it gets out, the changes that will follow will be beyond your control, understand? And Lin faltered slightly upon hearing this before nodding. I promise. That was what he said, but he was thinking in his heart, I'm just a normal person. Don't I have the right to go back on my word? That's impossible. Chun Chin continued, I'll have to start from when I came into contact with the colorful energy pillar. At the time, I was immediately sucked away by an extremely terrifying, engulfing power. One has to realize that I've cultivated a special cultivation method that allows me to sever my karma with the heavens. Even a normal heavenly god wouldn't be able to suck away my power in such a domineering manner. And Lin nodded in agreement upon hearing this. He could tell from Chun Chen's expression that he had been taken advantage of. However, Chun Chen still wanted him to touch that pillar. If this were anyone else, and Lin would have smashed them with his hammer a long time ago. So, how did you come up with the idea for me to touch the pillar? And Lin asked. Chun Chen extended a finger. The colorful energy pillar is imbued with the power of the heavenly Tao, and it's a darkness-type power. You possess the Tianming Tao physique, so the heavens will not reject you. And Lin nodded in agreement. What she said made sense. He had heard something similar from the first heavenly disciple of the abyss of evil, the Night Monarch. The Night Monarch and Tao Lord Lu also possessed the Tianming Tao physique, so he wasn't special. Chun Chin extended a second finger. This alone isn't enough. The second point is the most important. You possess the two paramount heavenly gods of wind and lightning. So if the pillar is also imbued with the power of the heavenly gods, then you should be able to resist it to a certain extent. But I've blasted the pillar with the power of the heavenly gods, and it didn't work at all. And Lin was perplexed. Chun Chin extended a third finger. This is the third point I'm going to tell you about. A profound light suddenly appeared in the youth's eyes, and the atmosphere gradually changed. And Lin, you probably don't even know who you are, right? And Lin smiled. I am the sect leader of the 4-9 Immortal sect, the war god of the celestial court, the chef god of the celestial court, the heavenly lightning god, the tamer of divine lightning, the kingdom of the 9 states. Stop! Stop! Chun Chin massaged his brows. His head was throbbing with pain. The tense atmosphere had been shattered just like that. What I'm saying is, you don't know who you really are. Chin Chin looked at Lin. Think about it. Heavenly Goddess Lin used attitude toward you. Why did she target you? Why did her emotions fluctuate so much whenever she saw you? In particular, what she said to you prior to her death. And Lin faltered momentarily as the image of a devastatingly beautiful heavenly goddess flashed through his mind. The heavenly god with golden eyes and waist-length white hair spoke in a soft yet sorrowful voice. And Lin, are you willing to be my friend? When you stare into the abyss, but the abyss ignores you, that's great. We're still friends in the end. I wanted to kill you before following you. Who would have thought that we'd still be alive and become friends? I'm waiting for you in death and eternal darkness, and Lin didn't think too much about these inexplicable words. Now that he thought about it, all of the clues connected together, and they gave him quite the fright. Chun Chen ignored Lin's expression as he looked at Lin. What kind of power can absorb the paramount powers of the heavenly gods for its own use? What kind of existence can make the most powerful beings of the heavenly human tribe rely on and be reluctant to part with the final divine halo of a divine heaven stage cultivator is darkness, right? Who could it be that they're trying to follow? If there's a power that can even devour my power, then that's probably the only power that has the right to do so. As for the power that it left behind in the energy pillar, the best way to do that is to use its own power to break through it. And Lin's features paled slightly. A certain possibility had just been revealed to him, and he found it a little difficult to breathe. Chun Chen asked in a calm and collected manner, and Lin, what would you do if you were the paramount heavenly god of darkness? Chapter 1595. There were 6 paramount powers of the heavenly Tao: sky, earth, ocean, life, light, and darkness. But now, Chun Chen was asking what he should do if Lin was the heavenly darkness god, and Lin's lips twitched. Heavenly darkness god? Did he have something like that? If so, why didn't the system notify him? Why couldn't he use the power of the heavenly darkness god? If he didn't, then how was he going to explain heavenly goddess Linyu and the colorful energy pillar? He couldn't just assume that a divine heaven stage, heavenly human tribe mighty figure would spout nonsense before his death, could he? And Lin's mind was in a mess. He was instinctively rejecting that identity, but he was also extremely afraid that that identity would bring him massive changes. The heavenly darkness god was indeed very bad *s, but what it represented was going to completely change his life. Didn't that mean that he and Lin was not a human, but rather a part of the heavenly Tao? And Lin simply couldn't accept this. There had to be a problem somewhere. And Lin's brows furrowed as he racked his brain for an answer. Chun Chen didn't press Lin for an answer, but he didn't press him for an answer. This had to have something to do with the system. But what kind of role did the system play in this matter? Devouring a heavenly god's authority, and thus being able to use the authority's power. Is it the power of the darkness authority, or the power of the system a short while later? And Lin looked up at Chun Chen again. I have a question. Please go ahead. Chun Chen replied without any hesitation. Do you know where Tao Lord Luya is? And Lin asked. And Lin felt like it was time for him to ask that old man some questions. Tao Lord Luya? Chun Chen's brows furrowed slightly before relaxing again. He seemed to have encountered something extremely joyous over 100 years ago, and he's now on vacation in another world. The veins on Lin's forehead bulged, and he was struck by the urge to punch someone. What the F***CK? He's throwing the F***king system at me, so that's a joyous occasion, isn't it? Holy **T. I'm in dire straits here, but he's on vacation in another world. And Lin got angry just thinking about it. What's wrong with you? Chun Chen stared blankly at Lin, who was suddenly angry. It's fine. And Lin smiled. I'll leave this place. Chun Chen wanted to say something, but hesitated. In the end, he couldn't help but say, And Lin, I have something to say, but I don't know if I should say it. I shouldn't say it. Absolutely not. And Lin interrupted. Chun Chen choked upon hearing this before continuing with a stern expression. I don't care whether you're the heavenly darkness god or not. All I want to ask is if you were the heavenly darkness god, which side would you stand on? And Lin looked at everyone outside the halo of light with a smile. My Tao partner, my friends, my disciples, they all live in the kingdom of the 9 states, and they are all humans. I will protect them with everything I have. Chun Chen lowered his head and heaved a sigh of relief, as if a heavy burden had been lifted. He looked up at Lin with a smile. Our heaven-crushing sect has chosen the right person. I hope you'll continue to live up to that promise. This was the first time Lin had seen Qin Chun reveal a pure and youthful smile. In stark contrast to his cold and expressionless face, his smile was very natural and full of vitality, which was very comforting to look at. He faltered slightly upon seeing this. "Let's go," Qin Chun said, and Lin came to his senses and nodded. The halo of light around the spotless realm disappeared. The two people who had been censored reappeared before everyone's eyes. Everyone couldn't help but gather around to look at Lin with wide eyes. They didn't say anything, but their intentions were quite clear. They were waiting for Lin to reveal something. And Lin thought to himself for a moment before deciding to reveal some important information. Chen Chen said that I might be very bad *SS, and I think he's right. Everyone, Chen Chen, everyone felt as if there was a bottomless pit in their stomachs. They were already feeling very bad that they couldn't get a piece of Lin's secret. But now, Lin had dealt them a critical blow. Puff! Yi Ling couldn't help but burst into laughter. Master really likes to tell the truth. The Celestial Arch gave her a thumbs up. Not only did you gloss over it, but you also flexed along the way. All of the other members also burst into laughter upon hearing this, and no one pursued the matter any further. The Celestial Thearcha's voice transmission talisman also lit up at this moment. Emperor Chang Sheng's voice transmission talisman sounded from within. His voice was extremely excited, and everyone felt as if he were laughing like a child. Celestial Arch, you succeeded. You actually succeeded. Oh, how do you know? The Celestial Arch suddenly realized that he hadn't told anyone about the battle yet. Emperor Changsheng replied with an excited expression. The heavenly human tribe on the eastern, central, western, and northern fronts have all begun to retreat despite having the upper hand. Furthermore, they've retreated for over 50,000 kilometers. It's quite clear that they're afraid of a certain power. I've thought about it for a long time, and only your power fits the description. The Celestial Arch was enlightened upon hearing this. The heavenly human tribe on the southern front had been completely wiped out, and the heavenly human tribe on the other fronts had most likely already received news of this. They most likely didn't want to be the next front to be destroyed, so they had all changed their battle styles. Ha ha ha! Who would have thought that the heavenly human tribe would be afraid? This is so satisfying. Emperor Changsheng was still chortling with glee. He felt like he had finally been able to vent all of the grievances he had endured for several decades. A faint smile appeared on the Celestial Thearcha's face. Don't get too cocky yet. The battle has only just begun. The two emperors chatted for a while longer before hanging up the voice transmission talisman. Everyone knew that it was time for them to part ways. Rather than saying goodbye, it was time for the extermination team to make a triumphant return. I have to return to the Celestial Court to officially announce my return and make arrangements for the Kingdom of the 9 States United Army, the Celestial Arch said. Little Bai and I have to go to Nuwa's cabin of life first, Black Spirit Snake said. White Spirit Snake waved her tiny hands with a wide grin. Senior Lin, Big Sister Black, and I will be back soon, and then we'll fight by your side. The adorable Vermilion Bird Princess had transformed into the gorgeous and graceful 9-colored divine Vermilion Bird, and her enchanting voice reverberated through the air. I'm going to lay low for a while. Do your best, everyone. I hope you're the final winners. All of the extermination team members waved goodbye to the beautiful divine Vermilion Bird in the sky with wide smiles on their faces. The divine Vermilion Bird's gem-like eyes reflected the white-robed figure, and after taking a deep glance at him, it spread open its wings and flew toward the west. And Lin, Su Xiaolan, and the others sat on by Ling's spatial white fairy before flying back to the 4-9 Immortal Sect. The battle at the southern heavenly gate had officially concluded. Not long after, the news spread at a terrifying speed and instantly spread across the entire continent. The southern heavenly gate had been destroyed, and the entire world was astonished. Chapter 1596. The news of the celestial darch of the celestial court, the sect leader of the 4-9 immortal sect, and Lin, the great empress of the Snow tribe, High Priestess Mengji and Shangguan, all spread throughout the entire Tai Chu continent. However, that wasn't the most shocking news. The entire heavenly human tribe united army had been annihilated. 3 Dao integration stage, super mighty figures, and a dozen or so heaven pioneer stage great generals had perished. The news that followed was even more terrifying. The impact of this news was like a nuclear bomb, striking all living beings on the entire Tai Chu continent with incredulity. Countless powerful beings fell silent, and countless mighty figures were dumbstruck. The extermination team traveled south, slaying 9 heaven pioneer stage great generals, 2 divine heaven stage heavenly humans, and 2 heavenly gods outside the southern heavenly gate. Even the heavenly earth god had to flee in defeat. The passageway between the 2 worlds of the southern heavenly gate had been destroyed, and the southern heavenly gate no longer existed. Waves of shock surged through the entire continent upon hearing this news. Countless living beings drew sharp intakes of breath as if they were listening to a heavenly book. 9 heaven pioneer stage great generals? It was quite an exaggeration, but it was still acceptable. But 2 divine heaven stage heavenly humans? These legendary god of creation stage powerful beings had never died in the history of the heavenly human tribe. But now 2 of them had died? What kind of joke was this? Furthermore, 2 heavenly gods had been slain in quick succession, and a paramount heavenly god had escaped. This was completely beyond the imagination of all living beings. In the past, this was something that they wouldn't even dare to imagine. But now, it was happening right before their eyes. None of the living beings dared to believe this news, but it had been verified by many first-rate powers. The heavenly human tribe united army had been forced to retreat for over 50,000 kilometers, thereby confirming the authenticity of this news. So, just who was this extermination team that had achieved such a glorious feat? All of the living beings present had their eyes glued to the extermination team. This was a team with such a low-key name, but it had now become the most dazzling existence on the entire continent. This was a stark contrast that made everyone realize just how badass the extermination team was. Look at how inconspicuous their name was. Yet what they were doing was earth-shattering. The extermination squad was tasked with breaking through the most difficult path in the world, a path more difficult than ascending to the heavens. That was because the extermination squad was tasked with breaking through the path of the heavens. There wasn't a single cultivator in the world who wasn't curious about the extermination team. Right at this moment, the 4-9 immortal sect seemed to have responded to the cries of all living beings on the continent, and they officially announced the list of extermination team members. The return to void stage mighty figures included Merlin, Cassidy, Dabai, Xiaohong, True Nuclear Celestial Immortal, Setting Moon Celestial Immortal, Missing and Celestial Immortal, Tina, Lu Qianhuan, Sun Yulua, Yao Mingxi Bailing, the 5th Sage, and Lin Dao Integration Stage super mighty figures included the Divine Phoenix Maiden, Little Huang, the Celestial Darch, the Ancient Dragon Empress Raphaela, White Spirit Snake, Black Spirit Snake. There was also a very special person, the 2nd heavenly disciple of the heaven-crushing sect, Chin Chin. When the living beings of the world saw this lineup, they were all shocked. It had to be said that every single one of them was a great figure whose name shook the continent. The lineup was so luxurious that it could be said to be unique in the world. All living beings were able to gain a better understanding of this shocking feat from this incomparably powerful lineup. This was truly a well-prepared and unexpected surprise attack. After all, only such a badass lineup could accomplish something like this. Many rational mighty figures were still in disbelief, thinking that a heavenly god-level enemy like this was not something that could be taken care of. However, reality was staring them in the face, and they had no choice but to accept it. As such, They could only sigh in admiration at how badass the extermination team was. Most importantly, when all of the living beings learned that the team leader wasn't Chin Chin, the celestial Dharch, black spirit snake, or any of the other super mighty figures at the Tao integration pinnacle stage. Instead, it was a return to void stage cultivator by the name of Enlin. Countless living beings began to think back to this legendary figure from 100 years ago. The current sect leader of the 4-9 Immortal sect had returned. Many well-known newspapers and magazines on the Tai Chu continent used the words, "The Return of the Monarch," as the headline of this earth-shattering event, expressing their reverence and fanaticism toward that legendary figure. There was no need to doubt Enlin's influence. Perhaps many people would forget his name in the span of 100 years. But if his name were to resound throughout the entire continent again, it would set off a chain reaction that would make him even more popular than before. Many seniors who had lived for over 100 years would recount Enlin's legends to their juniors with relish. All of his stories were full of twists and turns, and all of them made for great conversation topics. Many powerful beings at the soul formation pinnacle stage praised Enlin with abandon in order to leave a good impression on this Lord of Transcendence, who could help others transcend tribulations thus. Enlin's name had exploded throughout the entire Tai Chu continent. The 4-9 Immortal sect also exploded as everyone discovered that most of the members of the extermination team were from the 4-9 Immortal sect. The 4-9 Immortal sect had become a legendary sect again. Not only was it the most powerful sect among the 5 great sects, but it was even approaching the level of influence of the Celestial Court. The Kingdom of the 9 States United Army, as well as the Allied Powers, had transformed into a sea of elation. The Spirit Lake Realm, the Kingdom of the 9 States, the Holy Paradise, the Demonic Realm, the Dragon Tribe of the East Sea, and the West Sea Alliance were all in high spirits. The extermination team had destroyed one of the heavenly human tribe routes, giving them the first glimmer of hope after several decades of arduous battles. That's right, the extermination team had proven through their actions that the heavenly human tribe could be defeated, and so could the heavens. The extermination team had become a legend and a team of hope. News of Rafaela's death spread throughout the entire continent along with the destruction of the southern heavenly gate. Her death made this battle even more tragic, but it also diluted some of the joy of victory. Rafaela was simply far too popular across the entire continent. The death of the number 1 goddess of the Tai Chu continent struck countless living beings with grief, and they all mourned for the kind and gentle archangel. Not only were the Kingdom of the 9 States Alliance mourning for her, but even the heavenly human tribe, Creation Realm, and Western Heavenly Dragon Forest were also mourning for her. The reason for this was none other than the fact that her healing light had shone in those places before. The Tai Chu continent mourned for her even more than the war. The Garden of Eden even held an unprecedented funeral for her to celebrate her heroic deeds to the entire continent. In the eastern region of the Tai Chu continent, in the Kingdom of the 9 States, ever since the all-out war erupted across the entire continent, it had been a long time since there had been so much celebration. All of this seemed to have been triggered by the return of a certain man. At this moment, that man had already returned to his sect and was resting. Chapter 1597. A storm was brewing in the outside world. The extermination team was renowned across the entire continent. And Lin's name resounded across the entire continent again. He was the team leader of the extermination team, but he was currently in seclusion at the 4-9 Immortal sect, meditating and recuperating as he watched the clouds roll by. During the past few days, Enlin had been recuperating at the sect. After all, he would only be able to prepare for more intense battles in the future if he was in a better state. His body had already become extremely frail, and his legs had turned to jelly, to the point where he had to be supported by Yi Ling as he walked. Su Xiaolan was also in a very poor state. She had unleashed her self-detonations without any regard for the consequences, and she had even injured her Tao foundation. If it weren't for the fact that Raphaela's divine Tao reciprocation had healed her Tao foundation, she probably wouldn't even be able to progress in her cultivation base in the future. Two critically ill patients who had overexploded their bodies lay side by side on the recliner. Under the warm sunlight, they leisurely looked at the blue sky and white clouds in the sky, feeling the cool breeze caressing their faces. Yi Ling was wearing a black Taoist robe, and she was feeding fruits to her master and his wife in an obedient manner. Master, the Kingdom of the Nine States news agency has chosen you as the Man of the Year. Yi Ling held a spirit jade grape between her slender fingers as she placed it into Lin's mouth with a seductive smile, and Lin was quite elated to hear this, and he turned to the divine maiden beside him with a wide smile. Su Xiaolan, don't you think I'm bad asterisk SS? Bad asterisk SS. Bad asterisk SS. Su Xiaolan chimed in with a lazy expression. Yi Ling also fed a spirit jade grape to Su Xiaolan with a wide grin. Master's wife has actually won the Man of the Year award 15 times in the past century, and Lin. Su Xiaolan patted Lin's head with a faint smile on her face. You're already doing very well. You're just a little bit behind me. Keep up the good work. And Lin almost threw up a mouthful of blood. A little bit. That's more like a galaxy. Yi Ling couldn't help but burst into laughter. For some reason, she was quite amused by her master's wife's humiliation. The warm sunlight shone down upon her body. The young girl couldn't help but look up at the sky. Her clear and spirited eyes reflected the golden sun as if it contained light. She smiled. The weather today is really nice. I hope it stays this way. In the western region of the Tai-Chu continent, on a boundless ocean, the seawater within a radius of over 50 kilometers surged into the sky like a fountain. In the sky, there was a small continent that was being propped up by a massive fountain. On the continent, there were immortal mountains and spirit rivers, mountains and grasslands covered in flowers, and there were countless exquisite and gorgeous palaces. There were even waves of silk-like, multicolored light drifting in the void, making it look like an immortal paradise. This was the core base of the West Sea Alliance, the immortal land above water. A beautiful mermaid with skin as fair as jade was lying on a large, colorful bubble floating in the air, looking at the newspaper in her hand with a smile. Her blue fishtail gently slapped the bubble behind her, and she appeared to be a little excited. Boss and Lin is so awesome. My boss is still my boss. The mermaid's face was full of happiness and pride. She was in Lin's underling, Lan Xiaoni. In the past 100 years, this little brother Lan, who used to love to cry, had steadily sat in the position of the leader of the West Sea Alliance. He ruled over the forces of the West Sea, including the 2 great ancient clans, the 10 great sea demon tribes, and hundreds of forces of various sizes. In total, there was an army of over 1 billion sea demons. After a long period of tempering, she already possessed the noble and holy temperament of the goddess of the West Ocean. Not only was her appearance impeccable, but she also emanated a kind of supreme dignity. This was the leader of the West Sea Alliance in the eyes of outsiders. However, when Lan Xiaoni saw the news about Lin, she reverted back to her usual feeble, mischievous, and hopeful demeanor. A sense of dependence welled up in her heart, as if she had someone to rely on at a time like this. Lan Xiaoni really wanted to let go of all of her burdens and enjoy Boss and Lin's protection. This thought had only just appeared in her mind when she shook her head to get rid of this thought. No, now is not the time to be a lazy bum. Lan Xiaoni looked down at the Kingdom of the Nine States newspaper in her hand, and she stared at Lin's handsome and radiant image in her sapphire eyes, upon which a determined expression appeared on her face. I've waited 100 years for Big Boss and Lin to return, so I have to persevere even more. I can't let Boss and Lin worry about the heavenly human tribe anymore. I have to defend the Western Front with my life and shoulder some of the burden for Boss. The mermaid flicked her tail lightly, and she sprang up from the colorful bubble. She reached out and rubbed her fair and tender cheeks. Then she purposely became dignified, like a goddess who was ruthless but didn't say much. She had the demeanor of a domineering leader. Only then did she fly to the immortal land above water and gather all the experts for a meeting. Within the massive blue palace, Lan Xiaoni sat on her throne with a cold expression on her face. Her luscious black hair was coiled up in a tall bun, and there was a divine seal flashing on her forehead, exuding a paramount aura that made all of the mighty figures of the West Sea involuntarily revere her. 6 Tao integration stage, super mighty figures, and over 100 return to void stage mighty figures were gathered together, and all of them stood respectfully before her. The heavenly human tribe on the Western Front had retreated for the first time, and the West Sea Alliance was finally able to catch a breather. Only the West Sea Alliance would be able to take on the entire heavenly human tribe on their own. In reality, if it weren't for Lan Xiaoni's power of water and her ability to control the ocean, they would have been crushed a long time ago. Not only has the heavenly lightning god returned, but he has also broken through the heavenly human tribe's southern front's southern heavenly gate. Are you still going to question my decision? Lan Xiaoni raised her chin with an authoritative expression. As soon as he said this, many of the mighty figures present revealed looks of shame and awkwardness. Back when the news of Enlin's death had spread, the West Sea Alliance had been plunged into turmoil. Even though Lan Xiaoni had turned the tide and maintained the stability of the alliance, there were still many mighty figures who were unconvinced. When the heavenly human tribe reappeared, most of the mighty figures and even super mighty figures left the alliance. Just as the West Sea Alliance was on the brink of collapse, Lan Xiaoni awakened the power of the heavenly god of water, and like the ruler of the sea, she once again became the paramount leader of the West Sea Alliance. Even though there were still many mighty figures who were disgruntled during her reign, all of them expressing that they shouldn't be fighting for the human race and for the heavenly lightning god, who was most likely dead. However, Lan Xiaoni always emphasized that Enlin would definitely return and lead the human race and the West Sea to a glorious future. High priests Gu Yu and Yu Feiyu, who were the most proficient in divination, had also divined a portion of the future. By following Enlin, there was indeed a chance that they could create an unprecedented, glorious future. Thus, the West Sea Alliance became the most staunch ally of the human race and defended the Western Front for the human race. This defense lasted for over 50 years. Who knew how they managed to hold on for so long? Thankfully, Lan Xiaoni's prophecy came true. The heavenly lightning god really did return, and he proved to the world in his most powerful form by destroying the entire heavenly human tribe army on the southern front. This was extremely exciting news for the West Sea Alliance. It proved that they had chosen the right person to follow, and all of their previous efforts had been worth it. After this incident, Lan Xiaoni's prestige became even more prominent. All of the mighty figures looked up at the woman on the throne and bowed in unison. We pledge our loyalty to Alliance Leader Lan. A faint smile appeared on Lan Xiaoni's face, but she didn't say anything. However, her heart was already jumping with joy. Chapter 1598. Lan Xiaoni began to set up the West Sea defensive line and assigned all of the mighty figures to guard important locations. She had awakened the power of water, and one of its abilities was the ability to sense what was happening in an area of 500,000 kilometers around her. It was also because of this ability that the West Sea had become her battlefield. No movement of the heavenly human tribe could escape her detection. Lan Xiaoni's rule had become even more stable now, and none of the mighty figures of the West Sea objected to her orders. Instead, all of them expressed their unwavering determination to carry them out. Lan Xiaoni was not going to let her guard down in the upcoming battle. Instead, she was going to be even more cautious. The extermination team had displayed the true power of the heavenly human tribe to the world. Just the southern heavenly gate alone was guarded by 9 heaven pioneer stage heavenly humans, 2 divine heaven stage heavenly humans, 2 heavenly gods and 1 paramount heavenly god if the southern heaven gate was like that. What about their western heaven gate? After all, they had been fighting for 50 years, and the only reason they hadn't been defeated was because their heavenly, god-level opponents hadn't come out to fight. It was even more impossible for the western heavenly gate to not have any heavenly gods. From what Lan Xiaoni knew, the paramount heavenly sea god was buried in a certain tomb deep within the West Sea. The Empyrean deities didn't act because they were afraid of the backlash from the heavenly Tao, or because the timing wasn't right. However, she couldn't just ignore the fact that the enemy hadn't appeared yet. She had to prepare for the worst-case scenario. The meeting was dismissed. Lan Xiaoni continued to bask in the sun on her colorful bubble. Her upper body was wearing a small blue shirt, and her white and slender waist was exposed, shining brightly under the sun. Her fishtail was still swaying gently in boredom. She rested her chin on her hand and fell into deep thought. What was the worst-case scenario? Lan Xiaoni's eyes lit up slightly. In the worst-case scenario, I'm already a dead fish. In that case, shouldn't I write a will in advance? Let's do it. She took out a brush, ink, and white paper from her storage ring and stuck out her tongue. Her blue eyes were filled with excitement and shyness as she wrote a few words in the upper left corner. Big Boss and Lin. These words were written almost instinctively. Even she didn't expect that the only person she wanted to write a will to would be him. Lan Xiaoni's hand faltered slightly. She suddenly didn't know how to write. What should she write? A bright blush appeared on Lan Xiaoni's face, and it was as if tears were about to seep out of her eyes. Her 2 tiny pearls swayed lightly beneath her earlobes, just like her thumping heart. Alliance Leader Land's pleasant yet conflicted voice rang out from the immortal land above water. "Oh, I'm going to die. Achoo!" And Lin, who was lying under the warm sun, suddenly sneezed. Yi Ling, who was feeding him fruits, leaned over curiously, and a fragrant aroma wafted into the air as she looked at Lin with a curious expression. "Master, did you catch a cold? Perhaps there's a beauty who's thinking of me." And Lin chuckled. Yi Ling couldn't help but roll her eyes. Su Xiaolan glanced at Lin, and Lin shuddered, and he tried to salvage the situation. "Maybe it's not a human who misses me. Cats, dogs, insects, fish, and fish can also miss me. I'm a celebrity now." Su Xiaolan couldn't be bothered to respond to him, and she also rolled her eyes at him before continuing to munch on spirit fruits. Even if there were people who liked Lin these days, she couldn't do anything about it. After all, her and Lin was so exceptional. How could she not allow other female cultivators to like him? And Lin's fame was on the rise, and he was becoming the husband of the citizens. She, Su Xiaolan, wasn't some kind of demon, so she wasn't going to go against all of the female cultivators who liked her and Lin. Su Xiaolan was quite confident that Lin didn't like other female cultivators. She was also very exceptional, and there were many male cultivators who admired her. However, all of them knew that they weren't good enough for her, and none of them dared to dream of being with her. As for other female cultivators, how many of them could compare to her? If they wanted to compete with her for Lin, they had to at least weigh their own abilities. She was the most powerful human cultivator in the world, and she was extremely confident. Rumble all of a sudden. Dark clouds began to gather in the sky, and Lin's expression faltered upon seeing this. In contrast, an elated expression appeared on Yi Ling's face. "Brother and brother are back." In the sky above, 2 black dragons obscured the entire heaven and earth. Sinister veined patterns appeared on their thick scales, and a paramount dragon might surge through the air. This was the aura of a Tao integration stage, true dragon, and Lin was still lying on his lounge chair, and a smile appeared on his face as he sensed the terrifying auras. The 2 black dragons were clearly showing off, and their mentality was very similar to Yi Ling's when she had reunited with him back when they were reunited. They were both disciples who wanted to prove their abilities to their master. They wanted to earn their master's approval. Soon, the dark clouds dissipated. 2 dragon tribe men in black Taoist robes appeared above the 4-9 immortal sect. One of them was a young man with dragon horns and golden eyes, while the other was a middle-aged man with dragon horns and crimson eyes. The 2 of them had vastly different dispositions, and their expressions were also quite different upon seeing Enlin. "Master, you really are still alive." Tears welled up in Xiao Zhe's eyes as he hurriedly made his way over to Enlin. He wanted to hug Enlin, but he was afraid that this would be too abrupt, so he stood hesitantly in front of Enlin. A faint smile appeared on Enlin's face as he spread open his arms. Only then did Xiao Zhe embrace him with excitement. "This is great. Master, I thought you were already dead, but who would have thought that you would still be alive? It's true. You really are alive, Master." The young man hugged Enlin tightly and felt the warmth of Enlin's body as he spoke with excitement. Enlin's lips twitched slightly. Why did the term "alive master" sound so weird? Xiao too made his way over to Enlin with a warm smile on his face, and he extended a natural salute. "Your disciple pays his respects to Master. Welcome back, Master." "There's no need to be so polite." Enlin waved a hand. He clicked his tongue in wonder as he looked at Xiao Zhe and Xiao Tuesday. Who would have thought that both of you would reach the Tao integration stage? 2 Tao integration stage true dragons. Just thinking about it makes me feel bad. Asterisk. Yes, you're probably the face of our 4-9 immortal sect now. Master, you're the face of our sect. Xiao too spoke with reverence on his face. He was truly in awe of his master. In the past, he had been won over by Enlin's mending of the heavens and rapid progression in his cultivation base, but now he had been won over by Enlin leading the extermination team to wipe out the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army on the southern front. His master was a legendary figure who was capable of such feats, and this was something to be proud of. Xiao Zhe was even more direct. "If I didn't have master's teachings, how would I be where I am today?" Enlin rubbed his nose awkwardly. "What did I teach you?" A scorching light appeared in Xiao Zhe's eyes as he looked at Enlin. "Master, you've proven to me that only with power can I be revered and revered by all. You've taught me by example, and I'm willing to give everything I have to achieve this goal." Enlin's mouth gaped open. That worked. Chapter 1599. Su Xiaolan couldn't help but burst into laughter as she ridiculed him. "Little Xiao, your ability to spout nonsense with a straight face has improved again. What do you mean by using strength to prove it? Only with great strength can you become respected by thousands of people, and only then can you become high and mighty. Isn't this the same as saying that only with strength can you show off?" However, Enlin is indeed teaching by example. At the very least, he has proven through his actions that you can flex if you are powerful. If that's your motivation for Tao integration stage, then that's quite a good goal. The woman in the jade dress looked at the handsome young man with a dainty smile on her face, and Lin felt as if a sword had been stabbed into his heart. His master was flexing to motivate his disciple so that his disciple could understand the true meaning of life and succeed in Tao integration stage. Even a ghost wouldn't believe such a thing, right? Xiao Zhe looked at Enlin with a serious expression and completely ignored Su Xiaolan's words. "Master, I'm telling the truth. You have to believe me." Enlin's face convulsed. All right. I believe you." Yi Ling latched onto Enlin's arm with a wide grin on her face. "My motivation to become more powerful is also because Master has set a very good example for me. I want to prove to Master that you made the right decision to accept me as your disciple and that I didn't disappoint you." Enlin's heart had been stabbed a few times, but it had been healed by the adorable Yiling. "I don't have as much sincerity as you do." Xiao, too, heaved a forlorn sigh. "I just don't want to die. I just want to live longer." And Lin nodded with approval. "That's a very good goal." From a certain perspective, Xiao Tu's motivation to become more powerful was the most reliable one. Not long after that, A beautiful woman with a shimmering golden body made her way over to them. She latched onto Xiao Zhe's arm and bowed with a faint smile on her face. Fanny pays her respects to sect leader Enlin, and Lin's eyes lit up. You too! Fanny and Xiaoza blushed at the same time. Master, I became Tao partners with Fanny 60 years ago. Xiaoza was a little embarrassed as he scratched his head awkwardly. Fanny also wore a shy expression as she stared at Enlin. Enlin was a little dazed. Xiaoza, who was not very good with words, had finally managed to win Fanny's heart. Thinking back in the opposite shore realm, he was the most crucial assisting player. At the time, he didn't have anything to give to his disciple, so he decided to give his disciple a wife. He then made a bet with Fanny, and if he lost, he had to agree to one of her requests. After that, Fanny lost, and he asked Fanny to try to be friends with Xiaoza. Xiaoza successfully won over Fanny with his silver tongue. Who would have thought that after several decades, Xiaoza and Fanny would actually be together, personally facilitating a marriage? And this marriage was a major event in his disciple's life. As a master, this kind of feeling was quite wonderful. Congratulations, congratulations. I wish you two happiness forever. And Lin stood up to congratulate them with an elated smile on his face. Xiaoza and Fanny were also very happy to receive Enlin's blessings. They brought out a jug of immortal wine from their storage rings and poured cups for both Enlin and Su Xiaolan. Master, you weren't present during our wedding, so let us formally offer a toast to you now. Xiaoza raised his cup with tears shimmering in his eyes. Fanny also extended a slender hand and raised a glass of wine with a grateful expression. Zhe's master is the person I respect the most. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have been able to find Zhe and reap the fruits of my happiness. Little and I, Zhe. The two of them looked at one another with deep emotion, and Lin's flesh crawled as he raised his cup again to congratulate the two of them. Oh, wait, they weren't really newlyweds. They had been married for several decades, so they could be considered an old married couple. After toasting Enlin, Xiaoza and Fanny made their way over to Su Xiaolan with wide grins on their faces. Let us offer another toast to Master's wife. Xiaoza's eyes lit up. Su Xiaolan also stood up from her lounge chair with a vibrant smile on her face. I wish you two happiness for the rest of your lives. Fanny extended a salute before asking with a hint of anticipation in her eyes. When will we be able to attend Master and Master's wife's wedding? After all, I heard from Zhe that your agreement. The shimmering golden woman raised her eyebrows with a knowing expression. Su Xiaolan naturally knew what she wanted to say, and she didn't say anything for once. Instead, she turned to Enlin with an affectionate smile on her face. I'll listen to Enlin on this, and I'll let Enlin decide. Oh! Fanny let loose a meaningful cry of surprise. Xiaoza, Xiaotu, and Yiling also chimed in, and Lin blushed upon hearing the mention of his wedding with Su Xiaolan, and he glared at them. What are you all yelling about? Even though that was what he was saying, he still wore a smile on his face. Xiaoza chuckled. Who would have thought that Master's wife, who has always been very assertive, would be so gentle and helpless in front of Master? Su Xiaolan's eyebrows perked up slightly as she let out a long sigh. Ah, Master's wife is very gentle and beautiful, just like a goddess. Xiaoza immediately spoke with an extremely sincere expression. And you really respect Master. After all, in your hearts, each other's feelings are the most important. This is also a sign of true love, higher than the heavens and deeper than the ocean. All right, hurry up and withdraw your divine technique. Su Xiaolan rolled her eyes. Xiaoza shut his mouth with a sheepish expression, and Lin was completely dumbstruck. He thought to himself, the divine Tao this disciple has attained is probably diatribe, right? Due to the destruction of the southern heavenly gate, the other 4 heavenly human tribe armies had retreated for over 50,000 kilometers, giving the Kingdom of the 9 States United Army a chance to catch their breath. It was exactly because of this that Xiaoza and Xiao, too, couldn't wait to return to the sect to see Enlin. Soon, everyone else also returned. Xiao Chou and Bai Yao also returned. It was said that time was like a butcher's knife. However, the passage of 100 years didn't leave a single mark on Xiao Chou's face. He was still as ugly as ever, and he was even uglier as he wailed in Enlin's arms. However, Enlin was very touched. In his eyes, Xiao Chou was extremely handsome. Bai Yao extended a curtsy toward Enlin with a faint smile on her face. She was still as seductive as ever, and she was very pleasing to the eye. Bai Muyu also made her way over with a vibrant smile on her extremely beautiful features. I pay my respects to sect leader Enlin. Please take care of me in the future. We're all one family, so there's no need to be so formal. Enlin chuckled. They really were one family now. Ever since the creation realm decided to join the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army, the White Fox Tribe Imperial family had all migrated to the 4-9 Immortal sect. Enlin was naturally more than happy to welcome them. There were many handsome men and beautiful women in the sect now, so why not? After the White Fox tribe migrated, the 4-9 Immortal sect gained close to 10 return to Void Stage mighty figures. Enlin suddenly recalled that Xiao Chou and Bai Yao were both returned to Void Initial Stage mighty figures. Thinking about it now, it seemed like his beast pets and servants were also returned to Void Stage mighty figures. Ah, I'm the one with the lowest cultivation base again. Chapter 1600. With this in mind, Enlin was instantly motivated to cultivate again. The challenges in the future were only going to become more and more severe, so he had to find an opportunity to improve his cultivation base. As for the 100-year promise, Enlin had already mentioned that promise to Su Xiaolan when they were reunited. Su Xiaolan had told him to listen to Enlin at any time. Enlin, on the other hand, said that he would only get married after taking care of the Heavenly Human Tribe. He didn't want to host a wedding only to have a bunch of heavenly gods come to ruin the wedding and launch a surprise attack on him. If he was going to hold a wedding, then he had to hold it in a safe, smooth, and joyful manner. This was going to be the best memory of his life, and he couldn't afford to make any mistakes. Hence, his top priority now was to become more powerful, then destroy the Heavenly Human Tribe and the heavenly gods before returning to his sect and marrying Xiaolan. Enlin was even more motivated now that he had set a goal for himself. He turned to look at the Cultivation base tab in his system. Return to Void Intermediate Stage, Condition. Beat 9 Dao Integration Stage living beings into submission. Mission Progress, June 9th. You have now beaten Feng Weia, Emperor Yi Deng, Emperor Meng, Empress Helen, Emperor Beixing, and the god engulfing skeleton into submission. Enlin was quite elated. He had thought that this was an impossible mission, but he had already completed most of it. He only had to beat 3 more Dao integration stage super mighty figures into submission, and he would be able to progress to the return to Void Intermediate Stage. He was a little surprised that the god engulfing skeleton had been beaten into submission. In terms of power, the god engulfing skeleton was at the Dao integration pinnacle stage, and he wouldn't be able to defeat it even if he unleashed his full power. Setting aside the fact that the heavenly gods were more powerful than the god engulfing skeleton, Enlin could definitely defeat the god engulfing skeleton if he could beat the heavenly gods. Enlin was only able to defeat the heavenly gods because his powers of the heavenly gods countered each other, as well as his special constitution and the special properties of the evil-slaying sword. Only with all of these special hacks was he able to defeat a heavenly god in such a perilous situation. In reality, just from the perspective of his control over the powers of the heavenly gods, his cultivation base was quite low, so the power and frequency of his use of his powers were inferior to that of the normal heavenly gods. The same went for the god engulfing skeleton. In a one-on-one battle, he really wouldn't be able to defeat the god engulfing skeleton, let alone beat it into submission. The system had determined that he had been beaten into submission. Could it be that this was because he and Su Xiaolan were in a group battle, and Black Spirit Snake was unleashing a relentless barrage of powerful attacks in the sky. As long as the opponent surrendered, it would be considered as having been beaten into submission. There was nothing wrong with this analysis, and Lin suddenly became restless. He turned his gaze to his two disciples in front of him and revealed a kind smile. "Little Xiao, little Tu." And Lin smiled. Xiao Zhe and Xiao Tu's hair stood on end as they stared at Lin in bewilderment. "Xiaoza, what's wrong, master?" "Xiao Tu, what is it?" Haven't you both progressed to the Tao integration stage not long ago? Let me ask you a question. Who's stronger in a fight?" And Lin asked. Xiao Zhe and Xiao Tu looked at each other before shaking their heads. "I don't know. I've never sparred with Brother and Lin before." Xiao Zhe shook his head with a resigned expression. "Both Xiao Zhe and I are extremely durable. He has invincible defenses, while I have countless lives. We're the most difficult beings to deal with among Tao integration stage super mighty figures. If we were to fight once, we probably wouldn't be able to determine a victor even after 3 days and 3 nights. Xiao Tu analyzed in detail. Xiao Zhe paused for 3 seconds before replying. "We probably wouldn't be able to determine who's stronger even after fighting for a year." And Lin, why are you asking this question?" Su Xiaolan asked. "I want to see who's weaker. Then we can join forces to beat him into submission." And Lin replied with a sincere expression. "Su Xiaolan, Xiao Zhe, and Xiao Tu. Their sect had a Tao integration stage super mighty figure, so they naturally had to make good use of this resource. Seeing as he knew that it was useful to beat his opponents into submission, why should he waste this opportunity?" Xiao Zhe and Xiao Tu finally understood why Lin's benevolent smile gave them goosebumps. He was AF * king retard. "I think I'm stronger." Xiao Tu retorted without any hesitation. "No, I'm clearly stronger." Xiao Zhe retorted in a cold voice. And Lin, Su Xiaolan, and Lin, they're finally back from the kingdom of the 9 states, so please don't make things difficult for your disciple. Su Xiaolan was a little sympathetic. "Master's wife is the best." Xiao Tu turned to her with a grateful expression. "Long live Xiaolan." Xiao Zhe also yelled with excitement, and Lin felt like this made sense, so he gave up on the idea, not taking into account anything else. But his disciples had fought through life and death, and they were finally home. Were they going to be beaten up by their master and master's wife? That was way too pitiful, and Lin couldn't bear to see this happen. "You're right, Xiaolan." And Lin looked at Su Xiaolan with a loving expression. Xiao Zhe and Xiao Tu seemed to have realized something. If they wanted to live a good life, they had to suck up to master's wife. And Lin was well aware of his system's nature. If he wanted to complete the system mission and beat a Tao integration stage super mighty figure into submission, he had to at least severely wound them to the brink of death. Xiao Zhe and Xiao Tu couldn't be bothered with that. If little Huang were to be beaten like that, he might run away from home and lose him forever. As for Xiaolan, and Lin couldn't even bear to punch her, let alone beat her into submission. Just like that, this evil plan was temporarily shelved, and Lin had to think of something else. And Lin took a deep breath. "Xiaolan, I have a plan that I might need your help with." "Sure," Su Xiaolan replied. And Lin faltered slightly upon hearing this. "I haven't told you what the plan is yet." "I am willing to do anything as long as I can help you," Su Xiaolan replied with a smile. And Lin's heart jolted upon hearing this, and a sense of warmth welled up in his heart from being trusted. As for Xiao Zhe, Xiao Chou, and the others, they naturally began to jeer again. They all had Tao partners, but they still felt like they had been showered with dog food. Xiao Tu didn't feel much of a reaction. After all, he had been single for hundreds of thousands of years and had lost interest in female dragons a long time ago. He didn't care much about relationships, and he only felt like Master's wife was a good person. "Xiaolan, tell me which Tao integration stage super mighty figure is weak, and we can go bully them together, and Lin suggested. Bully Tao integration stage, super mighty figures? What kind of hobby is that? Su Xiaolan was shocked. I have a mission to become more powerful, and I have to beat a Tao integration stage, super mighty figure into submission. And Lin replied. Su Xiaolan finally understood what Lin was trying to do. Xiao Zhe and Xiao Tu were dumbstruck. Beating up Tao integration stage, super mighty figures could make them more powerful? All right, I'll gather some information for you. Su Xiaolan nodded with a solemn expression. She knew that Lin really did want to take advantage of this opportunity to become more powerful while the battle was still relatively easy. As for becoming more powerful through the Tao integration stage, others might not believe it, but Su Xiaolan definitely believed it. A man who could progress through consuming beast cores and divine pills, why couldn't he become more powerful through beating up Tao integration stage, super mighty figures? Chapter 1601. Su Xiaolan's support made Lin very happy. Thus, the two of them began to ponder over who to target. Let's ignore the Tao integration stage, super mighty figures that have joined the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army for now. After all, if we provoke them, divine heaven stage powerful beings and heavenly gods could easily be drawn to us, Su Xiaolan analyzed, and Lin nodded in agreement. Then, let's start with the super mighty figures that harbor enmity toward the Kingdom of the Nine States, but haven't joined the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army yet. Su Xiaolan nodded in agreement. Those are all hidden landmines that might jump out at any time to attack the human race. If we can completely eradicate them, then we'll be killing two birds with one stone. At this moment, a woman in a colorful dress made her way over with a warm and pleasant smile. Master, I just went to the myriad flower forest of the gem state to collect some top-notch nectar. Would you like to try some? Oh, little Gu. Xiao Gu, should I call you Xiao Dai now? And Lin accepted the nectar and looked at the beautiful woman before him with a smile on his face. She was as beautiful as a Jiangnan river beauty. The woman in a colorful dress bowed gracefully, and a gentle smile appeared on her face. You can call me whatever you like, master. And Lin clicked his tongue in wonder. Since when was little Gu so feminine? Could it be that her disposition had also changed after reaching the pinnacle of the return to void intermediate stage? Little Gu seemed to have sensed Lin's thoughts, and she explained patiently, I'm cultivating in the Tao of metamorphosis, so I naturally have to be more like a butterfly. Occasionally dressing up as a flower maiden is my hobby, and it's also part of my cultivation. You can do that. And Lin was astonished. Nothing is too strange in this vast world. Little Gu didn't think there was a problem. Her bestie, Xiaohong, was able to attain her divine Tao even while basking in the sun, so it was no problem for her to attain her divine Tao by dressing up as a flower maiden. Su Xiaolan continued with a dainty smile. Nothing is too strange in this vast world, but the most extraordinary of all are the members of the 4-9 Immortal sect. As the acting sect master for decades, she naturally had the right to say such words. Su Xiaolan counted on her slender fingers. There's little Gu, who attempted to attain the divine Tao by transforming into a flower. There's Xiaohong, who attained the divine Tao by basking in the sun. There's Xiao Tu, who attained the Tao integration stage because he didn't want to die. There's Xianyuan Cheng, who progressed to the return to void stage after accidentally blowing himself up while researching explosions. There's Sun Yulua, who progressed to the return to void stage after being given nightmares by the sword spirit. There's Cassidy and Merlin, who attained the divine Tao for the sake of blood. There's Yiling, who progressed to the return to void pinnacle stage while weeping in front of Lin's grave. There's Little Na, who jumped to the return to void pinnacle stage. She counted all of the 4-9 Immortal sect members who had made breakthroughs through various inexplicable methods, and Lin was completely flabbergasted. If he hadn't heard it, he wouldn't have known. But now that he heard it, they were all freaking weirdos. There were all kinds of strange ways to break through. What was wrong with the members of this sect? Were they collectively letting themselves go? An apologetic expression appeared on her face, as if she was feeling a little guilty for making her breakthroughs too easily, and she was afraid that she would agitate everyone present. Yi Ling pursed her lips with a bright blush on her face. It was already embarrassing enough for her to suddenly make a breakthrough while weeping in front of a grave. But what was even more terrifying was that the person she had been weeping in front of was now standing right in front of her. It was extremely embarrassing. Su Xiaolan turned to Enlin with a meaningful expression as she spoke. Of course, our sect leader's method of making breakthroughs is also the most bizarre. I've never seen our sect leader cultivate seriously before, and he's always doing all kinds of strange things, but his cultivation base just keeps progressing. Everyone burst into raucous laughter upon hearing this, and they felt a lot more at ease. They were all worried that their methods of making breakthroughs were too strange, and they were feeling a little uneasy. However, compared to their sect leader, their methods were completely insignificant. With that in mind, their uneasy hearts finally relaxed a little. Wait, and Lin faltered momentarily before asking, "That's not what we were discussing just then, right?" Su Xiaolan also came to her senses. "That's right, we were discussing how to defeat Tao integration stage super mighty figures." And Lin and Su Xiaolan tasted the nectar that little Gu had brought them. The nectar was extremely fragrant and sweet, and not only did it gently tickle their taste buds, it also spread throughout their entire bodies, making them feel as if they were being melted by a sweet aroma, making them feel extremely comfortable. "Delicious," Su Xiaolan praised. "More." And Lin was also very excited as he ate. Little Gu wore a warm smile as she produced 2 more cups of nectar before placing them in front of Enlin and Su Xiaolan. The 2 of them continued to discuss their original problem as they ate the nectar. "Let's not think about the dark marshlands for now. I've already beaten Yi Dang into submission, and Emperor Fu Tian is at the Tao integration pinnacle stage, so he won't be easy to deal with." And Lin said, "Let's try to stay close to our enemies. If we're too far away from the Kingdom of the 9 States, we might be surrounded or intercepted by other enemies," Su Xiaolan continued. A few first-rate powers flashed through Enlin's mind, and he nodded lightly. "Then let's not think about the western heavenly dragon forest and the creation realm for now." Su Xiaolan stroked her chin as she murmured to herself, "In that case, the best places to go are the sinister spirit beast cesspool, the opposite shore realm, and the void spirit realm," and Lin smiled upon detecting the peculiar expression on Su Xiaolan's face. "Su Xiaolan, when I become more powerful, I'll go to the void spirit realm with you again. Next time. Neither of them will be able to escape. All right." Su Xiaolan looked at Enlin with a loving expression. Their next choices were the sinister spirit beast cesspool and the opposite shore realm. And Lin turned his eyes toward Fanny and little Gu. One of them was the daughter of the pale sage of the ghost tribe, while the other was a return to void stage immortal beast from the sinister spirit beast cesspool. They knew more about that place than Enlin and Xiaolan did. Fanny analyzed, the opposite shore realm's attitude toward the Kingdom of the 9 States is very ambiguous. Some of them support the human race, some advocate for the extermination of the human race, and some remain neutral. And Lin knew that Fanny's father was a Tao integration stage super mighty figure, but he remained neutral. Among the Tao integration stage super mighty figures who advocate for the extermination of the human race are Ghost Emperor Pajun and the Dark Spirit King. Ghost Emperor Pajun is at the Tao integration intermediate stage and has already joined the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army on the Northern Front. The Dark Spirit King is at the Tao integration initial stage, and he's at a critical juncture in his cultivation of the dark, earthly energy. So he hasn't joined the Northern United Army yet, Fanny explained. The Jade Bone Immortal Butterfly also chimed in. The sinister spirit beast cesspool is a staunch anti-human faction. All 4 mythological beasts have joined the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army. but only the Tao integration initial stage primordial demonic bear and the Tao integration intermediate stage thousand change divine monkey have actually joined the army. As for the Tao integration initial stage divine bat emperor and the Tao integration pinnacle stage heavenly venerate Yuqiang, they're both staying in the sinister spirit beast cesspool. I wonder what they're preparing. And Lin and Su Xiaolan looked at each other to see the excitement in each other's eyes. Should we start with the Tao integration initial stage super mighty figures? Su Xiaolan asked. A cruel smile appeared on Lin's face. All right, the Dark Spirit King and the Divine Bet Emperor. Your good days are over. Chapter 1602. And Lin and Su Xiaolan decided to start by beating the Dark Spirit King and the Divine Bet Emperor into submission. This operation required speed, accuracy, and ruthlessness, so it was not suitable for a large-scale operation. Xiao, Tu, and Xiao Zhe were the main forces on the eastern front of the Kingdom of the Nine States, and they had to guard the eastern front as well, so they couldn't leave for now. As for Phoenix Little Huang, it had to take Su Xiaolan's place to guard the northern front. The northern front was still too weak compared to the other fronts. Even with the Snow Maiden's Great Empress and the High Priestess, it was still a little lacking without Su Xiaolan and the Phoenix. Hence, it was better to leave Little Huang to guard the northern front for now. After a brief discussion, Lin and Su Xiaolan decided to bring Little Na, who was just barely comparable to a Tao integration stage super mighty figure. The three of them would be able to defeat a Tao integration initial stage super mighty figure with ease. They rested for another 3 days, and after recovering from their injuries and energy, they marched into the opposite shore realm again. The opposite shore realm was a paradise for the dead. It was located in the northwestern region of the Kingdom of the Nine States, and it was comparable to the Kingdom of the Nine States in size. Due to the special laws of heaven and earth, the opposite shore realm was shrouded in eternal darkness and extremely rich in energy, making it the ideal place to cultivate in the Ghost Tao. It was exactly because of this that there were many evil cultivators there. And Lin, Su Xiaolan, and Tina traveled through space. Tao integration stage, super mighty figures will be able to sense each other as their Tao resonates with heaven and earth. Hence, I have to teach you a special concealment spell technique that can conceal the aura of your Tao. And Lin explained with a smile. Su Xiaolan was astonished. There's a spell technique like that? Of course. Why do you think Qin Qin and the others were able to avoid detection during the extermination team's operation? Even the heavenly gods couldn't detect them, and it was all thanks to that spell technique. A white light shimmered on Lin's fingertip as he nodded toward Su Xiaolan's glabella. Don't refuse. I'll teach you the true intent of the spell technique. It's very easy to master. Su Xiaolan did as she was told and closed her eyes to feel the boundless Tao art true meaning. After a short moment, she opened her eyes, and her eyes were filled with a bright color. What an exquisite spell technique! He's simply blazing a new trail and forming a system of his own. Su Xiaolan sighed and said, the illusory body art can conceal the aura of the Tao and can even avoid the detection of the heavenly Tao. And Lin nodded with a smile. When Qin Qin and I were searching for an exit in the River of Time, we used this spell technique to evade the heavenly time god's power. So many Tao integration stage, super mighty figures were unable to solve this problem, yet the heaven-crushing sect was able to solve it. It has to be said that the heaven-crushing sect really is something. It's more than that. Su Xiaolan rolled her eyes at Lin. Also, don't talk to me like an old man. And Lin laughed heartily. He felt like it was quite interesting to flaunt his seniority in front of Xiaolan. Wow, a power that can isolate Tao? I want to learn it too. Tina's emerald eyes lit up as she tugged on Lin's hair with excitement, and Lin was a little surprised. This little fairy was capable of inventing countless spell techniques that defied the natural order a long time ago, but she was also interested in the spell techniques of the heaven-crushing sect? However, seeing as this was Tina's request, he naturally wasn't going to turn her down. He immediately poked the fairy's head with a thick finger and transmitted the true intent of the spell technique to Tina. Tina's eyes shimmered with excitement as she observed the illusory body art. Oh, so that's how it is. It really is very easy to conceal. If the will of the heavens doesn't try to detect it, it really won't be able to detect it. A white light flashed through the fairy's eyes, and countless laws suddenly appeared and disappeared before reverting to their original state. All right, I've deciphered it. The living beings in the divine mirror world won't be able to deceive me anymore. Tina clapped her hands together with a dainty smile. Done. And Lin, Su Xiaolan, so the reason why she was so eager to learn this spell technique was to decipher it. Tina's badassery had once again refreshed and Lin's impression of her. Little Na, how's your divine mirror world doing? And Lin couldn't help but ask. It's still the same. Tina sighed lightly. Even though there are over 20 extremely powerful living beings who have already attained the power of the divine Tao, they feel like they're missing something if they want to progress to the Tao integration stage. And Lin came to a sudden realization. This meant that the divine mirror world was facing some kind of bottleneck again. In order to break through this bottleneck, it most likely required not only accumulation, but also opportunities and opportunities. Last time, the divine mirror world had been upgraded by the realm core. What did the divine mirror world need to evolve now? And Lin couldn't think of anything, and neither could the goddess of creation. They could only take things one step at a time. The three of them soon arrived at the border of the opposite shore realm, and Lin, Tina, and Su Xiaolan all tore through space to appear in this world. There were special laws of heaven and earth that prevented them from traveling through space here, and Lin and the others flew deeper into the opposite shore realm. Su Xiaolan was a Tao integration stage super mighty figure, and she unleashed her void body mantra spell technique to conceal her aura before following Enlin onto the black brick. The sky became inky black and gusts of sinister wind swept past, sending chills running down one's spine. The ground here wasn't completely barren, and there were all types of glowing plants, most of which were red and purple in color, giving them a lethal sense of beauty. Su Xiaolan, the Dark Spirit King, resides in Tianming City in the northern part of the opposite shore realm, and it rules over billions of undead soldiers in the northern part of the opposite shore realm. It is the undisputed monarch of the Ghost Tribe. It is renowned across the entire continent, and all living beings tremble in fear at the mere mention of its name, and even children weep at the mere mention of its name. All right, stop trying to create a terrifying persona for the enemy. It's just a Tao integration initial stage, super mighty figure. And Lin chuckled. Su Xiaolan turned to Enlin with a speechless expression. Don't underestimate all Tao integration stage, super mighty figures. They are all extremely talented beings who have been acknowledged by the great Tao of heaven and earth and possess limitless potential. Their trump cards are also quite powerful, and it is possible for them to challenge opponents of a higher rank. And Lin naturally wasn't going to underestimate any of his enemies. After all, many of the enemies he had slain had died because they had underestimated him. With such an example in front of him, he naturally wasn't going to make the same mistake. After that, Su Xiaolan continued to brag about the Dark Spirit King. She said that the dark energy was the most powerful being in the world, and that even the emperors of the Celestial Court were extremely wary of it. She was most likely trying to get Enlin to take it seriously. Enlin could hear the concern in her voice, and a smile appeared on his face as he listened intently. The three of them continued onward into the opposite shore realm. Their cultivation bases were extremely powerful, and there was nothing that could stop them in their tracks. Thus, they flew for over 5 million kilometers. At a very peculiar place, he stopped in his tracks. There were vibrant rainbow flowers blooming on the ground, swaying their seductive bodies. Chapter 1603. The colorful flowers released the most dazzling splendor in the dark world. It was exactly because of these colorful creatures that the opposite shore realm wasn't so monotonous. I feel like there's a very special energy fluctuation here, Tina said. No way. These are all flowers. Even though they're very spiritual, there's nothing special about them. And Lin unleashed his divine sense to survey his surroundings, but he didn't discover anything. Tina wrinkled her nose as if she was following a certain scent as she traversed through the sea of flowers. And Lin and Su Xiaolan had no choice but to follow along. They were also very curious about what Tina had discovered. There were all kinds of flowers in the opposite shore realm, but they all had one thing in common, and that was that they all glowed. The sea of flowers that Lin traversed through was also a sea of light. The black stem, the tender and lustrous leaves, the bewitching and gorgeous petals, and the bursts of either quiet or fragrant aroma. The aroma that could make one lose their mind, the deadly poison powder, and the heaven and earth formation that could cause illusions, beautiful yet deadly. If a creature with a normal cultivation accidentally entered this sea of flowers, they would instantly lose themselves and might not even be able to find their way out. They would slowly die here and become nutrients for the flowers. Of course, and Lin was able to see through this level of illusionary formation with a single glance. Tina's constitution was extremely close to nature to begin with, so she was able to see something different. "It's here," Tina yelled, and Lin and Su Xiaolan immediately flew over and their eyes widened. What is this?" And Lin was a little shocked. There was a flower that was half the height of a grown man before him. All of its petals were round and smooth, just like mushrooms. However, that wasn't the important part. The important part was that there were all kinds of expressions on the mushrooms. Some of the mushroom petals were grinning, and there were even a few white, bony teeth protruding from them. Some of the mushroom petals were as bright as blood, and there were angry expressions on them. Some of them were bawling, and their petals were wet. Some of them were smiling with a comical expression, and their eyes were squinting. Some of them were even covering their mouths and laughing shyly, and Lin saw many vivid expressions from the flowers before him. They could almost be made into emoticons. Do you want to know how I feel? Flowers represent my heart. Is this the special thing you were talking about? Su Xiaolan asked curiously. She tried to sense the flower, but there was nothing special about it. It was probably a strange species. Actually, you can take it back and play with it. And Lin was a little interested. When the flowers on the ground heard Lin's words, some of them looked bashful, some were furious, and some even spat at Lin in disdain, as if they despised Lin. And Lin touched the nectar that was spat on his face and licked it. He chuckled and said, "So sweet." The corner of Su Xiaolan's mouth twitched uncontrollably. Tina also snorted as she looked at her master with a hint of disdain, and Lin remained unmoved. He turned to Tina and asked, "Now, tell me, what is this strange flower? Don't tell me it's just a strange flower." Tina shook her head with a smile, and her emerald eyes lit up with excitement. "Master, this is no ordinary flower. We've picked up a treasure." "Oh, something that's a treasure in your eyes?" And Lin's interest was clearly piqued. The goddess of creation standards were extremely high. In the core immortal realm of the divine mirror world, spirit rank fruits and immortal rank treasures were nothing more than snacks to her. What could make Tina this excited? The semi-transparent wings on Tina's back flapped gently, and she landed lightly on the mushroom-shaped flower petal. The petal immediately revealed an angry expression. Its face turned red, and two black lines rose up on its round head like eyebrows. It bared its teeth, revealing an expression of anger. That lively expression reminds me of Xiaohong. Su Xiaolan couldn't help but chuckle. Tina reached out and gently caressed the flower with her tiny, white hands. Not only was that mushroom-shaped flower petal enraged, but all of the other 98 petals were also enraged, as if they were saying, "Don't touch me!" And Lin and Su Xiaolan were both quite amused. A series of golden inscriptions began to appear on Tina's forehead, each of which was imbued with an indescribable sense of divinity, as if a paramount god had personally carved down a paramount command. The inscriptions formed a peculiar divine seal. The little fairy's aura also transformed in that instant. Her figure seemed to be pulled up infinitely, transcending beyond the world. The entire world seemed to be in the palm of her hand. With a flip of her hand, she could overturn the earth and cover the sky with another. And Lin was truly astonished this time. "I've only sensed this aura from the three pure ones and Nuwa. No, I can also sense it from Tina in the divine mirror world. But isn't this the Tai Chu continent?" Su Xiaolan was also astonished. Could it be that Little Na can already unleash God of Creation stage power? Even Tao integration stage, super mighty figures like Lin and Su Xiaolan were stunned by Tina's aura, let alone the mushroom-shaped flower. Expressions of shock and horror appeared on all of the flower petals, and they immediately converged to form a red ball before separating from their roots and rolling into the distance. However, Tina materialized a huge vital energy hand in the next instant before grabbing onto the ball with a wide smile on her face. "Hee, you finally revealed your true form, Underworld Tao Flower." The ball trembled uncontrollably in the vital energy hand and didn't say anything. Underworld Tao Flower. And Lin was dumbstruck. Su Xiaolan finally discovered that something was amiss when the flower revealed its true form, and her expression also shifted drastically. This little thing's aura has suddenly become extremely profound, and it can draw upon the Tao of heaven and earth to conceal its power. Tina stroked the round red ball and nodded with a smile. Immortal rank treasures are extremely rare and ethereal. They're extremely rare and precious treasures. Divine rank treasures are extremely rare even on the entire Tai Chu continent. However, this underworld Tao flower is a supreme treasure imbued with the Tao of its own. Normal plants have a certain chance of attaining sentience after living for a long time, but this underworld Tao flower has attained Tao after living for a long time. If it weren't for the fact that I'm the goddess of creation and am extremely sensitive to the Tao of heaven and earth, I would most likely have been deceived by its mundane appearance and failed to see the Tao intent hidden within it. It's only one step away from Tao integration stage, tribulation transcendence, and Lin and Su Xiaolan both drew a sharp intake of breath as their eyes widened with shock. They stared blankly at the red ball in Tina's vital energy hand. This mushroom-shaped flower was going to Tao integration stage. They had thought that Xiaohong was already freakish enough after attaining the power of the divine Tao while basking in the sun. But this mushroom-shaped flower was going to attain Tao after living for a long time, and it was going to silently progress to Tao integration stage, tribulation transcendence here. Chapter 1604. And Lin and Su Xiaolan were initially astonished before staring at the mushroom flower with a scorching light in their eyes. This was a Tao integration stage flower. Anyone would be tempted by this, wouldn't they? Su Xiaolan swallowed involuntarily, and Lin was drooling as well. The mushroom flower couldn't stand Lin's lecherous expression any longer, and it opened up its petals before spitting another mouthful of saliva onto Lin's face. And Lin wiped the nectar off his face before licking his finger. "So sweet." "Tina, Su Xiaolan. And Lin, please watch your image." As a professional protector, she couldn't bear to watch this any longer. And Lin was quite calm as he stared at the flower with a scorching light in his eyes. "Little Na, we finally found it, so what are you going to do with it? Do you want me to look after it for you? After you grow up, I'll—" He didn't even get a chance to finish his sentence before the sound of unfamiliar footsteps suddenly erupted from behind him. Forgive me for being blunt, but this is daylight robbery," a male voice sounded. And Lin and Su Xiaolan were both given a fright. No one had ever been able to approach them within a 5-kilometer radius. When did this person approach them? And Lin immediately turned around to look at the approaching man with a cautious expression. The man appeared to be a young man in his 20s. He wore a light purple Taoist robe and had a gentle expression on his face. He wasn't all that handsome, and in fact he gave off a feeling of weakness and gentleness. A human? There were humans in the opposite shore realm, a place filled with ghosts. And Lin's expression shifted, but he didn't act recklessly. Instead, he spoke with a serious expression. How could you say this is daylight robbery? I'm Little Na's master, so what's wrong with me looking after this thing for her? The man faltered slightly before bursting into laughter. This is my garden. He pointed at the red ball in Tina's hand. I planted this. And Lin was dumbfounded and didn't know what to say. He had initially thought that the other party was just rebuking him for trying to take over Tina's flower and calling him a robbery. However, he didn't think that the owner of the flower would be pointing fingers at him and Tina, the two bandits. Eehee! Tina's little hands trembled, and she tossed the flower onto the ground with an adorable smile. Su Xiaolan held her forehead with one hand and sighed helplessly. I knew it! How could it be possible to pick up a treasure so casually? So it's a treasure that someone planted here. After a short shock, Lin immediately bowed and apologized. Fellow Taoist, I'm really sorry for offending you before. Even with his strength, he couldn't see through the other party's cultivation. It was obvious that the man standing in front of him was not simple. He was just a little puzzled. Why did he have to meet a big boss every time he went out? This was too unlucky. He hoped that the big boss would have a good temper. At this moment, the flower extended its petals, branches, and roots again before blooming on the ground. It seemed to have found a backer, and it straightened its body before spitting at Lin. The nectar was then splashed onto Lin's face, and Lin didn't dare to be perverted anymore. He wiped the nectar off his face before stowing it away into his storage ring. The nectar of the underworld Tao flower was at least a high-rank spirit item, so it was quite valuable. The purple-robed man wasn't angry at all. Instead, a smile appeared on his face at the sight of Tina releasing the underworld Tao flower as he appraised Tina with an intrigued expression. You're very interesting. You're clearly not a god of creation, but you can sense the aura of the underworld Tao flower, and you can even unleash the aura of a god of creation. Tina was instantly displeased to hear this, and she raised her chin with her hands on her hips. What? Are you trying to tell me that I am a fake god of creation? The man immediately waved a hand. No. That's not what I meant. What I'm trying to say is that there aren't many beings in this world that I can't see through, and you're one of them. Oh, Tina nodded, but she thought to herself, what the F***CK does it have to do with me that you can't see through me? And Lin felt like this man was speaking like an otherworldly mighty being. So he took the initiative to break the awkward silence. Senior, if there's nothing else, we'll be taking our leave now. The purple-robed man didn't say anything. Instead, he picked a colorful flower and sniffed it before turning to Lin. I've heard of you, Lin. You're one of the most popular people on the Tai-Chu continent recently, and you're one of them that I can't see through. Oh, and Lin nodded with a smile, but he was thinking to himself, what the F***CK does it have to do with me that you can't see through me? He took a glance at Su Xiaolan and Tina, indicating that he was about to leave. If they continued to stay here, the purple-robed man might continue to say some weird things. As such, Lin naturally chose to leave. Wait. The purple-robed man seemed to have seen through Lin's intentions, and he suddenly said, It's fate that we've met. Aren't you interested in the underworld Tao flower? If you can solve the problem for me, I'll give you this underworld Tao flower. The purple-robed man smiled, and Lin, Su Xiaolan, and Tina's footsteps faltered as their eyes lit up at the same time. All 99 petals of the underworld Tao flower suddenly displayed pitiable expressions, as if they were extremely sad and pained by the purple-robed man's decision. Senior, you have a good eye for talent. And Lin smiled as he vowed, There's nothing in this world that I and Lin can't do. Even if it's impossible, I can make it possible. Tina also patted her chest. My goddess Tina isn't someone to be trifled with. Su Xiaolan was a little wary as she looked at the smiling man. Why did you choose us? If it's too dangerous, we won't do it. It's not dangerous, it's not dangerous. The man waved his hands in denial. I'm only asking you to do this purely because I can't see through you, so there's a chance that you'll be able to create a different outcome and free me from karma. If you succeed, then the underworld Dao flower will be yours. Please go ahead, Senior. And Lin's eyes glowed with excitement. The purple-robed man heaved a sigh of relief before looking up into the sky. My name is Ding Xiaoru. You might not be familiar with this name, but if I tell you that I'm Patriarch Zhu Yin of the Ghost Tribe, you'll know who I am, right? And Lin and Su Xiaolan's expressions both shifted upon hearing this, and waves of shock surged through their hearts. Patriarch Zhu Yin was the paramount god of the opposite shore realm. It was said that he lived in the land of extreme darkness with the face of a human and the body of a dragon. His body was as massive as a mountain range with a length of over 10,000 kilometers, and his every move controlled heaven and earth. He could see day as day, roar as night, blow as winter, exhale as summer, and exhale as wind. It was also said that he wielded the true essence of life and death. Once he appeared, he could command the entire ghostly army, regardless of what cultivation base or status the ghost tribe possessed. To put it in simpler terms, he was the most powerful and revered god of the ghost tribe. And Lin took a deep breath to calm himself down. Never would he have thought that the feeble man before him would be such a terrifying being. Senior Zhu Yin, what do you need our help with? And Lin asked. Call me Ding Xiaoru, the purple-robed man corrected before a disconsolate expression appeared on his face. I've fallen out of love, and Lin's face was filled with question marks. Patriarch Zhu Yin continued. I've fallen out of love, and my cultivation base has fallen. Su Xiaolan and Lin. Chapter 1605. The paramount god of the Hell-Side Ghost Tribe, Patriarch Zhu Yin, had fallen out of love. Tui, that wasn't the point. The point was he had fallen out of love, and Lin, Su Xiaolan, and Tina were all struck by a sense of incredulity. They stared blankly at the purple-robed man, not knowing what to say. Ding Xiaoru didn't seem to be surprised by their reactions. In reality, many powerful beings were the same expression upon hearing this news, and some of them were so shocked that a divine mountain had cracked open. The purple-robed man heaved a resigned sigh. I shouldn't have told anyone about something as humiliating as falling out of love. A perplexed expression appeared on Lin's face. You're a god of creation. How could your cultivation base have fallen out of love? That's too much of a joke. It's impossible. Ding Xiaoru shook his head and heaved a forlorn sigh. You wouldn't think that way if you knew about my love life. And Lin, Su Xiaolan, and Tina all turned to Ding Xiaoru with anticipation in their eyes, as if to say, Please begin your speech, mighty one. Ding Xiaoru spoke in a faint voice. I am the ruler of the realm of extreme darkness, and I can transform into countless forms. I have a human face and a snake body, a human face and a dragon body, a dark fire ghost body. These are the most common forms that I show to the world, but they are not my favorite form, and Lin looked at this man with an indescribable aura and speculated. Your favorite form is a human form? You fell in love with a human woman? Ding Xiaoru nodded before shaking his head. I like the human form, but the woman I love is not a human woman. Instead, it's a female ghost. And Lin. There was nothing wrong with a paramount god of the ghost tribe falling in love with a female ghost. It was a dark and windy night. Ding Xiaoru recalled the past. He was in pain, but he was also happy. He slowly told the story, and so on and so on. Tears welled up in Lin and Su Xiaolan's eyes. Tina even shed tears upon hearing this. How touching! I thought I wouldn't fall in love with a ghost. I'm the supreme god of the ghost race, so my worldview is completely different from that of mortals. But she's so special, and I was caught off guard, so I couldn't help myself. Li Yin became a ghost immortal with a lifespan of over 1 million years, and she appeared before me in her human form. Naturally, I transformed into a human form and stayed with her forever. Ding Xiaoru continued, "You can't imagine how deeply I love her. I am a Genesis tier god, and the colored glass world of the Yellow Springs is a world that I created. Everything in my world is built for her. Every blade of grass, every tree, every mountain, every river, every sea, every living thing, they were all built according to her imagination and her hobbies. They all have her shadow in them. This is my world, and it is also her world. I thought she and I would be in love forever." As the purple-robed man spoke, a pained expression appeared on his face. And Lin, Su Xiaolan, and Tina were a little excited. They were finally getting to the point. It was a dark and windy night. Ding Xiaoru continued, and Lin's lips twitched. There was no sun in the opposite shore realm, and it was always a dark and windy night. Why did he have to describe it like that? Was it romantic? Even though he was grumbling to himself, he still listened patiently. Ian and I were strolling through this sea of flowers hand in hand. All of a sudden, a woman in a colorful dress descended from the sky with immortal chi swirling around her. I have to admit, she was extremely beautiful, no matter what race or angle one judged her from. She was as beautiful as an otherworldly work of art that only existed in the heavens. All living beings have a certain degree of common sense when it comes to appreciating beauty. Maybe it's because I've been in human form for too long. I actually feel a kind of affection for her. Of course, this feeling is from the perspective of appreciating beauty. It's like looking at a very beautiful painting. It has nothing to do with emotions, Ding Xiaoru explained. And then, "You didn't fall in love with someone else, did you?" And Lin asked. As he spoke, he was already imagining the man falling in love with that celestial maiden, thereby breaking the woman's heart. In the end, he discovered that his true love was the original woman, and he was filled with remorse after losing her. Ding Xiaoru became even more disconsolate. I fell in love with her, but I didn't think that she would fall in love even more thoroughly and fall faster than I did. If I'm immersed in it visually, then she's completely conquered by that woman. And Lin, Su Xiaolan, and Tina. What the hell was this? Was there something wrong with the plot? Ding Xiaoru clenched his fists with an aggrieved and exasperated expression. That woman said she came to the opposite shore realm to train and observe the laws of heaven and earth. I wasn't too wary at the time, so I entertained her for a few days. In order to avoid arousing suspicion, I tried my best to avoid too much contact with her. Hence, Ian was the one who interacted with her during those few days. Their relationship improved very quickly, and they soon became good sisters who could talk about anything. I didn't think too much about it at the time. I only felt that Ian had found a good friend, and I was happy for her. Until one day, the paramount god of the ghost tribe trembled as if he were recalling some sort of nightmare. And Lin, Su Xiaolan, and Tina were all very nervous. It was a dark and windy night. I went out to hunt a rare soul beast and came back early. Then I saw Ian and her kissing amidst a sea of flowers. I was completely dumbstruck at the time, and my mind went completely blank. And Lin, Su Xiaolan, and Tina were also dumbstruck upon hearing this, and their minds went completely blank. He had been cuckolded. Patriarch Zhu Yin had been cuckolded, and he had been cuckolded by a woman. Waves of shock surged through everyone's hearts. They had thought that Patriarch Zhu Yin's heartbreak and fall in cultivation base would be shocking enough, but they didn't think that they would hear about Patriarch Zhu Yin being cuckolded as well. Ding Xiaoru clawed at his own face with a pained expression. I charged toward Ian like a madman and asked her what she was doing. I simply couldn't believe that Ian was such a ghost. However, Ian told me that this was her choice and that every living being should face their truest feelings. She said that she had fallen in love with that woman and that she was unable to extricate herself from it. If she continued to lie to me, it would be disrespectful to me, and she kept apologizing to me, The other woman even said that heterosexual love was completely influenced by the genes of reproduction, and that only same-sex love was the purest form of love. Arg. Pure love my F***ck. I really wanted to tear her apart. And Lin and Su Xiaolan were both astonished. That woman really was a monster. May I ask who that woman was, Senior? And Lin asked with a curious expression. Ding Xiaoru replied with an enraged expression. She was the Moon Palace master, Chang'e. Su Xiaolan and Tina were both astonished, and Lin was enlightened upon hearing this. Chapter 1606. The mighty Moon Palace leader, the #1 beauty of the Kingdom of the 9 States, had cuckolded a paramount god of the ghost tribe. This news sent Lin and the others into a state of deep shock, and Lin was a lot less astonished. After all, he had already mentally prepared himself for this. After all, Chang'e had always been that way. She was invincible in terms of beauty and charm, and she had always been very attracted to girls. As such, it was very easy for her to turn some innocent and naive young women gay. And Lin was aware of this, but Su Xiaolan and Tina didn't. They felt like the image of a celestial maiden Chang'e had been completely overturned. Their mouths gaped open, and they didn't know what to say. At this moment, Ding Xiaoru's expression was on the verge of breaking down. I wanted to kill Chang'e on the spot, but Ian protected her with her life on the line, so there was nothing I could do. Only then did I realize that Ian had really fallen in love with someone else. She had fallen in love with Chang'e, and she had truly fallen in love with her. The love that I once thought would last until the seas ran dry and the rocks would rot away. Just like that, it suddenly collapsed and shattered into pieces. The paramount god of the ghost tribe looked up into the sky with tears shimmering in his eyes. You have to know that I loved her very, very much. Even the world I created with the power of the God of Creation stage was modeled after her. Everything in that world had her shadow in it. Hence, when I lost her, the world I created also collapsed. That was the end of the world, an end that even I was unable to prevent. Matter was reduced to nothingness. The heart of the world was shattered, and everything began to fade away. The world was destroyed, and as the God of creation, I also suffered the most severe backlash in my life. Furthermore, my mental state was unstable at the time, so my cultivation base naturally dropped from the God of creation stage to the Tao integration pinnacle stage. Tears began to flow from Patriarch Zhu-Yin's eyes as he spoke. And Lin didn't think that this almost invincible being would have such troubles and setbacks. This had to be the most earth-shattering story of heartbreak he had ever heard. Because of Zhu-Yin's heartbreak, an entire world was destroyed. This was far too terrifying. Tina tapped her chin with a slender finger and murmured to herself, even though it's quite absurd, it does make a lot of sense. In the world created by the God of creation, it is the heavens. However, Li'in was Zhu-Yin's heaven, and everything that Zhu-Yin had created in the glazed Yellow Springs world was related to Li'in. Hence, Li'in abandoned him, and his world collapsed. This is a chain reaction caused by the broken connection between the two. This chain reaction is very likely to have devastating consequences. The little fairy's eyes lit up as if she had understood something. She had obviously used Zhu-Yin as a negative example to learn from her mistakes. Ding Xiaoru obviously noticed this as well, and he couldn't help but feel even more stifled. He, Patriarch Zhu-Yin, had dominated the entire continent and had never encountered a situation where he was being used as a negative example by a junior. However, he, who was deeply immersed in his heartbreak, did not want to fuss over this kind of thing. Instead, he continued, I had initially thought that when I walked out of this heartbreak, I would be able to raise my cultivation level again and return to the Genesis tier. However, several hundred years have passed since that incident, and I still haven't been able to walk out of it. That's right, I can't forget her. Seeing as I can't give up, perhaps reuniting with her is the only way for me to return to the God of creation stage. This is also my true desire. However, I've tried many methods, but I'm still unable to make Ian fall in love with me again. She has discovered her true feelings and sexual orientation, and she loves women. Ding Xiaoru turned toward Enlin and the others with a pained and conflicted expression on his face, but there was a pleading and expectant look in his eyes. What do you think I should do? Enlin, Su Xiaolan, and Tina roughly understood what was going on. Ding Xiaoru was asking Enlin and the others to help Li Yin become straight again. No wonder he was willing to offer an underworld Dao flower that was close to the Dao integration stage. As long as it could help him return to the God of Creation stage, it was definitely worth it. Of course, I have to find a way to make her fall in love with me again without harming her or forcing her to do so. Ding Xiaoru was confident that as long as Yin was interested in a man, then he would definitely be the one she loved. The only mistake was that Li Yin had been turned gay by Chang'e. Even now, she was still looking up at the moon in the sky and silently cheering on Chang'e for her Dao integration stage battle. It could be said that she had completely fallen into depravity. All right, I'll accept this mission. And Lin patted his chest with a firm expression. Su Xiaolan and Tina were also full of fighting spirit and eagerness. A hint of anticipation appeared on Ding Xiaoru's face upon seeing Enlin's quick response. I'll leave Yin to you then. If you encounter any problems during the execution of this mission, I'll do my best to help. He still had a lot of trust and anticipation in Enlin, and Lin was always able to make the impossible possible, and he was also very adept at doing things that were out of the ordinary. Perhaps he really would be able to turn a completely gay woman straight. And Lin spoke. I need you to take us to her as a friend. Ding Xiaoru nodded. Come with me. Amidst a sea of flowers that was emitting white light. Heaven and earth were completely dark and devoid of light, and only the flowers were swaying in the wind like stars in the sky. A young woman in a colorful dress sat on a rock, swinging her well-proportioned legs from side to side as she looked up into the dark sky. No one knew what she was thinking about. Yin, Ding Xiaoru called out. Didn't I tell you? Don't bother me. The young woman turned around with furrowed brows as she looked at Ding Xiaoru. Her eyes were as translucent as if they were made of glass. I didn't want you to be bored waiting for Chang'e here, so I brought a few friends to chat with. I'm sure you'll be interested. Ding Xiaoru's expression was extremely dark, but he still maintained a gentle smile. Ding Xiaoru, don't keep bringing random people to bother me. If you keep this up, I'm going to hide in a place where even you don't know where I am. Li Yin flared up with rage. It was quite clear that Ding Xiaoru had found a lot of relationship teachers to guide her. However, in the next instant, Enlin, Su Xiaolan, and Tina had already emerged from behind Ding Xiaoru with friendly smiles on their faces. Enlin was just about to say something. However, Li Yin's eyes abruptly widened, as if she had seen something that she was extremely fond of. She immediately rushed toward Enlin and instantly grabbed onto Enlin's hand with both of her slender hands. She raised her head with excitement in her eyes. It's you. You're Enlin. You really are Enlin. There was no need to mention how excited and happy he was. Ding Xiaoru. Su Xiaolan. Chapter 1607. Just as Enlin was at a complete loss, Li Yin spoke again. You're good friends with Big Sister Chang'e, right? Hurry up and tell me about Big Sister Chang'e. And Lin's lips twitched. Li Yin was so excited just because he was Chang'e's friend. This was a little difficult to deal with. He had actually sunk so deep. Ding Xiaoru heaved a faint sigh of relief. Thank God he was overthinking things. And Lin didn't have any special relationship with Li Yin. And Lin followed Li Yin to a large rock and sat down beside it. Li Yin's eyes were extremely bright as she looked at Enlin with curiosity in her eyes. A joyful smile appeared on her face, and she was as pure as a teenage girl's. The more she was like this, the more Enlin felt like this was an extremely difficult mission. It was quite clear that Li Yin was only being so nice to him because of Chang'e. As for Ding Xiaoru, he had already been given the cold shoulder. By the way, Congratulations on successfully destroying the southern heavenly gate, Li'in said with a dainty smile on her face, and Lin looked at the woman beside him. Her lips were red, and her teeth were pearly. She was like a real human girl. It looked like ghosts really weren't much different from humans after becoming immortals. He felt like this was a very good opportunity to change the topic. Let me tell you, the first person I should thank for destroying the southern heavenly gate is the woman beside me. And Lin pointed at Su Xiaolan. Oh, the divine phoenix maiden helped you a lot? Li'in asked, and Lin nodded with a firm expression. Do you know what power I relied on to win that extremely difficult and almost impossible battle? What power? Li'in's curiosity was piqued. The power of love, and Lin replied with a serious expression. Ding Xiaoru, Li'in rolled her eyes. Su Xiaolan maintained a stiff smile on her face, and Lin ignored Li'in's roll of her eyes and spoke with a serious expression. Don't underestimate the power of love. Xiaolan and I have great rapport in battle, and our cooperation has produced an effect that is greater than two. Not only that, but every time I was beaten to the brink of death by my enemies, I couldn't lose. I couldn't let Xiaolan die here. My emotions transformed into limitless power, and I finally defeated my enemies. All of this is the power of love. Patriarch Zhu Yin was extremely excited. He actually managed to get it back. Furthermore, his analysis was reasonable. Even he almost believed it. Nothing was more convincing than one's own heaven-defying battle record. And Lin's trick was obviously very successful. Sure enough, Li'in nodded in agreement. Just when Ding Xiaoru thought that things were progressing, a yearning expression appeared on Li'in's face as she said with a smile, The power of true love is indeed mighty. I believe that my love with Big Sister Chang, it can also create countless miracles, and Lin's jaw dropped. Ding Xiaoru felt as if his heart had been stabbed by a sword. Why did it seem like she had become even more determined? And Lin wasn't going to allow this to happen, and he continued, Only heterosexual love can create miracles. Same-sex love is destined to fail. Why do you say that? Li'in glared at Lin with a stern expression. A faint smile appeared on Lin's face at the sight of her defiant expression. Have you ever seen a heterosexual mighty figure stay together for a very long time? Li'in's expression faltered slightly upon hearing this. There really wasn't a single heterosexual mighty figure on the entire Tai Chu continent who had a heterosexual Dao partner. Big Sister Chang, Yi and I can be the first couple. Li'in's heart wavered slightly before she suddenly made up her mind again, and Lin heaved a faint sigh in his heart. It really wasn't that simple. He shook his head as he continued. As the saying goes, the harmony of yin and yang is the great Tao of heaven and earth. All right, there's no need to tell me that. I've heard it so many times already. Li'in waved her hands before turning to Ding Xiaoru with a faint smile on her face. You've really put a lot of thought into this. Even sect leader Lin, the most renowned figure on the entire Tai Chu continent, was convinced by you? Awkward expressions appeared on both Lin and Ding Xiaoru's faces. They didn't think that their true intentions would be seen through by Li'in so quickly, and Lin decided to just go with the flow. Seeing as that's the case, I won't hide anything from you. I'll tell you the truth. Chang, he already has someone in her heart. As soon as he said that, everyone's expression changed again. No, I don't believe you. Li'in's enraged and determined voice sounded. 300 years ago, we were still in a good relationship. She then became busy with her Dao integration stage battle. So how could she have a change of heart so quickly? Li'in glowered at Lin with an enraged expression. Don't look down on my love for Chang Yi. You have no right to spout nonsense about our love for each other. I'll show you something, and you'll know whether I'm spouting nonsense or not. And Lin wasn't enraged, and he pulled out a photographic crystal from his storage ring before injecting his vital energy into it to play a series of images. Under the Moon Palace, beside the moon osmanthus tree. Two women in palatial dresses were leaning against each other. One of them was an exquisitely beautiful young woman. The other was also exquisitely beautiful, but her features were still a little immature. The two of them looked at each other with faint smiles on their faces. Falling flower petals and flowery smiles were like the most beautiful images between heaven and earth. Their beauty could mesmerize all living beings. Li'in's body trembled as she stared blankly at the scenes unfolding before her eyes. How could this be? Impossible. How could big sister Chang'e be with her? The two women on the screen were none other than celestial immortal Chang'e and celestial immortal Xiu. When others saw this scene, they might think that they were two sisters who had a very good relationship. However, Li'in was different. She could read the emotions hidden in Chang'e and Xiu's eyes, and these emotions were so similar to the emotions she had felt when she had looked into Chang'e's eyes. Those were the eyes of a lover. Li'in silently looked at the date on the photographic crystal. This was what had happened after Chang'e left her over 100 years ago. So, did that mean that Chang'e had already fallen in love with someone else? Why? Why did big sister Chang'e fall in love with someone else? Why did big sister Chang'e abandon me? Didn't we say that we were going to be together forever? Before she knew it, tears were already streaming down her face. She seemed to have received a massive emotional blow, and she was shaking her head incessantly, clearly unable to accept this reality. She really wished that this was a nightmare that she could wake up from. However, Lin struck while the iron was hot with a cold smile. You think same-sex love is pure love? What a joke. That's just your arrogant way of thinking. The person Chang'e has always loved has been celestial immortal Xiu. You're just a pitiful girl who's been toyed with. Think about it. Has she ever come to see you during these past few centuries? You're just a one-night stand that she had. Look at who has been by your side for hundreds of years, never abandoning you. And Lin's words were like a clap of thunder, and Li'in was instantly rooted to the spot. There were still tears shimmering in her eyes, and she turned to look at the purple-robed man behind her, only to be greeted by his warm and gentle gaze. Chapter 1608. Li'in's heart jolted as she stared blankly at the man before her, and Lin stood off to the side and continued. The feeling of being betrayed is very painful, isn't it? Look at who was the one who stayed by your side to protect you and give you the warmest care, even after experiencing the despair of being betrayed and the destruction of the entire world. Being together for a long time is a form of deep affection. It's been a few hundred years. Do you know how he survived? He had already fallen to the lowest point of his life, but the person he cared about the most was you. What about in comparison to Chang'e? She would have found someone else a long time ago. Don't be fooled by Chang'e's looks. She's a piece of trash. You need to follow your heart and find your true love. Think about it. What would you do if Ding Xiaoru left you? And Lin's barrage of words struck Li'in's heart with devastating force. No, it's not like that. Li'in's eyes glazed over, and she clasped her head in her hands before suddenly turning and running toward a nearby house, where she slammed the door shut with a loud bang. Ding Xiaoru yelled with a pained expression. Let her have some peace and quiet. For her to be able to experience such a strong emotional upheaval, it's clear that we're already halfway there. Now, we'll have to see if she can come around and return to your side. And Lin clasped his hands behind his back as he spoke in an indifferent voice. Ding Xiaoru wasn't an idiot, and he naturally understood this. For some reason, tears welled up in his eyes at the sight of the white-robed man standing beside him, and he felt as if he had become a little taller. Thank you very much, Mr. Lin. I've never seen Li'in look at me like that before, and I finally see hope in being with her again. Ding Xiaoru spoke with a grateful expression, and Lin snapped, What are you still standing there for? Huh. Ding Xiaoru faltered slightly upon hearing this. Hurry up and warm up your een. And Lin chuckled. Ding Xiaoru came to a sudden realization. When a woman suffered a huge blow, her psychological defense was the weakest. At that time, he must seize the time to give her support and warmth. Patriarch Zhu Yin ran toward the cabin in a panicked manner, completely behaving like a paramount god of the ghost race. And Lin was feeling a little dazed upon seeing this. And Lin stowed the photo away with a content expression. At this time, Su Xiaolan walked over with light steps. The light from the white sea of flowers illuminated her face, making it look as bright and moving as the moon. "And Lin, why do you have that kind of photo?" the woman asked with a relaxed expression. And Lin's heart jolted upon hearing this, but he also wore a relaxed expression as he said, "Haha, this is a photo that you two gave me during the Moon Festival." She said that she took it on a whim. "I've been casually tossing it into my storage ring ever since I took it. I've never looked at it. I only had a vague impression of it. Who would have thought that it would be able to produce such a miraculous effect?" Su Xiaolan nodded in agreement upon hearing this. This was no longer just a miraculous effect. This was the equivalent of a nuclear bomb. It could be said that if it weren't for the photo, there was no way they would have been able to break through Li Yin's emotional barrier. It was exactly because of the photographic crystal that Li Yin's faith was shattered. There was no need to force Li Yin to become straight. From a different perspective, as long as Li Yin was betrayed by the most perfect woman in the world, the woman she loved the most, she would naturally become straight again. Su Xiaolan cocked her head to the side with a hint of a smile on her face. "But that's a photo of Chang Yi and Su Qianyan looking at each other passionately. Why would you two give that kind of photo to you? It just doesn't feel right." And Lin's lips twitched upon hearing this. Su Xiaolan was extremely intelligent, so she wasn't that easy to fool. However, he couldn't tell her the truth that he had exchanged a high-rank spirit pill with you two for this photo, could he? At the time, he only wanted to get a photo to satisfy his cravings. Think about it, the #1 beauty of the Kingdom of the 9 States and the #1 beauty of the United University of Cultivation looking at each other under the moonlight. Just thinking about it made him excited. Who wouldn't be interested after hearing this? But if he were to tell Su Xiaolan the truth? And Lin racked his brain for a moment before a thought occurred to him, and he heaved a forlorn sigh. "Sigh, you should have noticed something from that photo, right? I'm doing this for Su Qianyun's own good. I asked you two to take a photo of it before sending it to Su Xan so he could take precautions. After all, I don't want Su Qianyun to be dumped by the B******, Chang'e. It's a pity that Su Xan didn't believe me. He even returned the photos untouched." And Lin said with a pained expression on his face. Su Xiaolan thought about this for a moment and felt like it made sense. To be honest, so many things had happened one after another, and her mind was in a complete mess. Chang Yi had stolen Li Yin's love and turned Li Yin gay. Li Yin had cuckolded Ding Xiaoru, and Ding Xiaoru's cultivation base plummeted. Now Chang Yi had cuckolded Li Yin, and they were even together with Su Qianyan. Her impression of Su Qianyan was clearly not a lesbian. "I've been kept in the dark for over 100 years. My God!" One thing after another that no one would believe was happening right before Su Xiaolan's eyes, and she felt like her head was spinning and her entire body was in a terrible state. Tina, on the other hand, was relatively calm and collected. She accepted new things very quickly. After all, she was a goddess of creation, so she always had a tolerant and compassionate heart. Weren't they just lesbians? She was already used to such occurrences in the divine mirror world. Who would have thought that we would be able to complete this mission so smoothly? It wasn't as difficult as I thought it would be. Tina spun around in mid-air with elation in her eyes. "It's all because of the power of my photo," and Lin said with a buoyant smile. Su Xiaolan nodded in agreement. "We wouldn't have been able to complete this mission if we had done it any other way. However, there's only one such photo in this entire world. In other words, we just so happened to stumble upon all of this. This is our opportunity. I'm the one who contributed the most to this mission. No objections, right?" And Lin spoke with a smug expression. Su Xiaolan and Tina both exclaimed in unison, but they didn't express any objections. He just wanted to take the underworld Dao flower, right? And Lin immediately knew what Lin was going to do. They didn't say anything. One of them couldn't be bothered, while the other felt like their master was the most powerful, so they should just let him have his way. After a while, Ding Xiaoru made his way out again. There was a mix of joy and sorrow on his face, and Lin and Su Xiaolan immediately went over to inquire about the situation. Thankfully, she didn't reject my kind intentions. I think it must be because of what you did, Mr. Lin, that she was able to see her emotions again, right? However, she didn't express any clear intentions. She only said that she wanted to calm down a bit more. Ding Xiaoru spoke with a wry smile, and Lin was extremely excited. That means we have a chance. Let's do it. We're just one step away, Xiaolan said with a smile. Let's go provoke her. And Lin suggested. Ding Xiaoru's interest was piqued. How? And Lin replied excitedly, Xiaolan and I will go flaunt our love. Chapter 1609. Patriarch Zhu Yin was given a fright. You're flaunting your love to my Dao partner. Not your Dao partner, it's your former Dao partner, and Lin corrected. That was quite a heart-wrenching response. Patriarch Zhu Yin finally nodded with difficulty and agreed to Lin's plan. Even though it was immoral to flaunt their love in front of Li Yin's face, it would be a good thing if he could awaken Li Yin's love for him. And Lin, Su Xiaolan, and Tina constructed a random house before settling down. Patriarch Zhu Yin also had a house nearby, but Lin encouraged him to move it closer to Li Yin's house. Ding Xiaoru thought about it for a moment before constructing a small house next to Li Yin's house. Patriarch Zhu Yin, who struck fear into the hearts of the entire continent, continued to play the role of a kind-hearted man, consoling the heartbroken Li Yin in the hopes that he could help her recover. Everyone's residence seemed to have been decided just like that. Li Yin knew that Lin and the others wouldn't leave, and she didn't want to see Lin again, so she remained in the house, thinking that they wouldn't meet again. However, she soon discovered that she was far too naive. The aroma of stir-fried meat wafted into the room with a lethal aroma. It was an indescribable aroma. It was far too delicious, far too lethal. Even though she was trying her best to restrain herself, her legs still failed her and began to move on their own. She opened the door and was greeted by the sight of Lin cooking outside with Su Xiaolan wiping the sweat off his brow in a thoughtful manner. Both of them appeared to be very happy and harmonious. Gulp! Li Yin swallowed involuntarily. An imperceptible smile appeared on Lin's face. The chef god of the celestial court was cooking in person with a frying pan. How could he not seduce a little vixen like her? Seeing as he had already seduced her, he would just have to watch from the sidelines. Sure enough, Li Yin couldn't bring herself to beg for food. Thus, she looked on as the two of them fed each other food. What a lovey-dovey scene! The young girl was almost forced to tears. Not only was it not enough to torture her with delicious food, but he even stuffed warm dog food into her mouth. Was there any humanity left? At this moment, a man suddenly walked out from behind her. Yin, do you want some? How about I cook for you? My cooking skills are also very good, Ding Xiaoru said with a gentle expression. Humph! Li Yin harumphed coldly before ducking back into her room. Ding Xiaoru was not disappointed. Instead, he smiled gently. During the next few days, Lin and Su Xiaolan bombarded Li Yin with food and dog food, and Li Yin was about to go insane. She almost considered moving away, but when he thought about it carefully, wasn't moving the same as admitting defeat. She was a little unconvinced. Furthermore, for some reason, she gradually came to a realization after being stimulated over and over again. It was as if her dusty heart was being wiped clean over and over again, and it gradually became clearer. Time flew by. One day, Li Yin walked out of her room to get some fresh air and arrived at a boundless sea of flowers. She wanted to look up at the sky and yearn for Chang'e, but she then caught sight of Enlin and Su Xiaolan sitting on a rock outside the door. They were leaning against each other and looking out at the sea of flowers, chatting and laughing, and they appeared to be extremely blissful. Humph. Chang Yi is such a heartless person. Also, why are Enlin and the others still here? It's been a few days already. Are they still going to fight me? Li Yin pouted as she looked at Ding Xiaoru. They like this sea of flowers and said they want to stay for a few more days. I can't control them. Ding Xiaoru shrugged with a resigned expression. Li Yin was completely speechless. She felt like her wound had been torn open again as she looked at the lovey-dovey couple, and her heart throbbed with pain. And Lin's words seemed to be reverberating in her ears again. You're just a pitiful B***starred who's been toyed with. Think about it. Has she ever come to see you during the past few centuries? You're just a one-night stand that she had. His words were like a long sword that pierced deep into her heart, making her feel as if she were suffocating. Chang Yi was going to progress to the Dao integration stage, and Li Yin was waiting for her. In fact, she had prayed for her for several centuries and defended her for several centuries. However, Chang Yi had suddenly found a new lover, and apparently she was going to pass the position of Moon Palace mistress to her new lover. Was this how Chang Yi was repaying her for her love? Tears welled up in Li Yin's eyes again. At this moment, a tissue appeared before her. Li Yin's expression faltered slightly, and she looked up at the man before her. A smile appeared on the man's face. I can't hug you as your Dao partner when you're sad, but I can still hand you a tissue. Li Yin's heart trembled slightly, and she accepted the tissue before wiping away her tears. Who told you to mind your own business? Your business is not my business, Ding Xiaoru replied with a serious expression. Li Yin fell silent. She finally spoke after a while. Ding Xiaoru, I betrayed you and caused your cultivation base to drop. You're the most revered being in the ghost tribe. So can you please be a little more stubborn? She raised her head, and tears welled up in her eyes as she looked at the man's gentle features. Hit me. Why didn't you hit a woman like me who cheated on you? Why did you hold back? Why did you beg me to make up with you? I didn't hold back. I'm not angry. As long as you're willing to come back, I'll forgive you. Ding Xiaoru replied with a serious expression. On a nearby rock, Tina snuck a peek at the two of them, and what they were saying was completely shattering her worldview. Ding Xiaoru! Li Yin gritted her teeth, and tears began to flow from her eyes again. I can be a slut, but why are you doing the same? You don't even dare to touch me. Are you still a man? Slap. An earth-shattering slap erupted. Ding Xiaoru slapped Li Yin across the face like a bolt of lightning, sending her flying for over 10 kilometers. Li Yin threw up a mouthful of blood as she flew through the air, and she only stopped after crashing through a tall mountain. Tina's mouth gaped open. Enlin and Su Xiaolan, who were in the middle of their public display of affection, suddenly stopped as they stared at the scenes unfolding behind them with dumbstruck expressions, and they drew a sharp intake of breath. Holy F***CK! What was going on? Why were they fighting? She clearly wasn't expecting him to actually hit her, was she? Was Ding Xiaoru trying to slap Li Yin to death? What a vendetta! This mission was probably going to fail, wasn't it? A dazzling streak of light flew through the air from the shattered mountain toward Ding Xiaoru. The young woman in the colorful dress pounced onto Ding Xiaoru's body like a baby swallow and began to pound his chest. You baddie! I told you to hit me, but you hit me so hard. Her left cheek had been slapped swollen, and there was still blood trickling down the corner of her lips. Ding Xiaoru held Li Yin tightly in his arms as he spoke in a gentle voice. All of our past grievances have been resolved in that one slap. Let's start over now, all right? The young woman in his arms shuddered slightly. Ding Xiaoru hugged her even tighter upon seeing this. Li Yin nodded with tears streaming down her face. Tina's eyes lit up with a thoughtful expression as she looked on at the scenes unfolding before her. and Lin and Su Xiaolan drew another sharp intake of breath. How was that possible? Chapter 1610. And Lin, Su Xiaolan, and Tina didn't know what kind of emotional journey the two of them had been through. This was just like how they couldn't understand why Ding Xiaoru's cultivation base would plummet after falling out of love. Without their avatars, they wouldn't be able to see what Ding Xiaoru was seeing, nor would they be able to accurately understand what he was feeling. Boom! All of a sudden, heaven and earth tremored violently. Boundless waves of vital energy surged toward Ding Xiaoru in a frenzy. Divine lightning surged and roared in the heavens, exuding paramount lightning might. The purple-robed man and the woman in a colorful dress embraced one another tightly, and they became the center of the storm. Such terrifying energy, fluctuations. Su Xiaolan stumbled back in retreat with shock on her face. Ding Xiaoru is going to return to the God of Creation stage, and Lin was extremely excited. Tina's eyes also lit up as she stared intently at Patriarch Zhu Yin to observe how he was going to return to the God of Creation stage. Witnessing this process up close was extremely beneficial to her. Divine lightning surged for 100,000 kilometers in the heavens, and bolts of black and purple lightning tore through space, tearing open a series of ghastly spatial rifts. That's chaotic divine lightning. It's a type of lightning that exists in chaos and transcends beyond heaven and earth. An expression of shock and astonishment appeared on Enlin's face, and he retreated even further with Su Xiaolan in case they were accidentally injured. Even though Patriarch Zhu Yin was returning to the God of Creation stage rather than breaking through to the God of Creation stage, the tribulation of heaven and earth that he had triggered was still extremely terrifying. The destructive energy in the surroundings was approaching, and the chaotic divine lightning was also baring its fangs in the clouds, preparing to completely destroy the weakened paramount god of the ghost tribe. This was a doomsday-like scene. Every single bolt of chaotic divine lightning was imbued with the power to destroy the world. Patriarch Zhu Yin chortled with glee as he looked at the oncoming power, and he stepped forward before gently sweeping a sleeve through the air. Heaven-splitting technique. Boundless chaotic power instantly surged forth in a frenzy before him. This was an indescribable power, as if it were power from the primordial era before heaven and earth had been created. As soon as it appeared, heaven and earth began to tremor violently, as if it had received an extremely powerful stimulus. The chaotic divine lightning in the sky above was already crashing down upon Patriarch Zhu Yin, but it was all absorbed by his chaotic power and pulverized into nothingness. Soon, Patriarch Zhu Yin's invisible and colorless power underwent a sudden change. All of a sudden, it was as if the power of nothingness had gained relativity and multiplicity. One yin and one yang, one heavy and one clear. Those with pure yang energy floated up, while those with heavy yin energy sunk down. Heaven and earth were redrawn. Suddenly, a completely different world projection appeared in the purple-robed man's eyes. His supreme divinity soared into the universe and shattered all the chaotic divine thunder in the sky. And Lin, Su Xiaolan, and the others felt a supreme divinity. It was as if they were facing a real god, a god that had transcended everything and was independent of the three realms. So this is Heaven Splitter. Tina murmured to herself, "That's way too terrifying. This kind of power has already transcended beyond my comprehension." Su Xiaolan took a deep breath, but her eyes were extremely bright, and Lin also seemed to have sensed something, and he observed everything in silence. Patriarch Zhu Yin clenched his hand toward the heavens, and his hand transformed into billions of ghostly spirits. A cold voice that was imbued with supreme divine might erupted throughout heaven and earth like a bell of the great Tao. "The heavenly Tao is nothing to me, and I am the sole ruler of the land of the dead." Countless Yin spirits and ghostly generals throughout the entire opposite shore realm looked up into the heavens at the same time as they unleashed the power within their bodies. Billions of dead spirits, played the tune of death at the same time. The peaceful and serene tune of the dead reverberated throughout the opposite shore realm. Bam! The chaotic divine lightning within a radius of 50,000 kilometers instantly disappeared. Patriarch Zhu Yin closed his eyes, and the heaven and earth that had been carved out from chaos shot into his glabella like a streak of light. At the same time, a world on the other side of the opposite shore was quickly being restored and mended. He stood there quietly with his eyes closed. He did not move or speak, just like a wooden pillar. Li Yin and Lin and the others all knew what to do and didn't disturb him. Instead, they silently stood guard off to the side. Peace and quiet had returned to this place, but the entire opposite shore realm was in an uproar. Patriarch Zhu Yin's divine mantra of the heavenly Tao is nothing to me, and I am the sole ruler of the land of the dead spread throughout the entire opposite shore realm like a divine decree, and the ghost tribe cultivators were completely unable to muster up any resistance. It was as if they were living a peaceful life, only to suddenly hear the words, "I am number one in the world." How could they not explode? All of the ghost tribe cultivators in the opposite shore realm were scared ***, but they couldn't muster up any resistance. All they could do was try to guess the identity of the living being who had just uttered those words, and most of them had guessed who it was. After all, aside from the paramount god of the ghost tribe, Patriarch Zhu Yin, no one else would dare to say something like that. Patriarch Zhu Yin's presence spread like wildfire among the ghost tribe cultivators. At the same time, the gods of creation who stood at the pinnacle of the Tai Chu continent all opened their eyes with different expressions on their faces. Some were smiling, some were sad, and some couldn't even be bothered to pay attention to Patriarch Zhu Yin. They didn't pay much attention to mundane matters. Even though Patriarch Zhu Yin's cultivation base had regressed, they had already anticipated this. It was just that it had happened earlier than they had anticipated. 3 days later, Patriarch Zhu Yin opened his eyes. His aura had been completely withdrawn, and he appeared just as ordinary and mundane as when they had first met. After returning to the God of Creation stage, a joyful smile appeared on his face. "Mr. and Lin, Ms. Su Xiaolan, Ms. Tina, thank you very much for your help." The paramount god of the ghost tribe, who had been cursing the heavens and earth just a few days ago, had regained his full strength, and there was not a single hint of arrogance on his face as he extended a respectful ghost tribe salute to Enlin and the others. Enlin and Su Xiaolan were extremely flattered. Tina was even more embarrassed. She had been spectating the entire time, so she had to thank Enlin and Su Xiaolan, who had been doing their best to feed Li Yin with their public displays of affection. "There's no need to thank me, Ms. Ding Xiaoru. Congratulations on returning to the God of Creation stage." And Lin faltered slightly before replying with a smile. At the same time, he also thought to himself, "You've already recovered your God of Creation stage power, so shouldn't we talk about your reward?" Ding Xiaoru immediately smiled, as if he could read Enlin's mind. "Ms. Enlin, seeing as you've helped me get Li Yin back, I will naturally fulfill my promise." "Promise? What promise?" Li Yin held onto Ding Xiaoru's hand with a curious expression. "I promised them that if they could help me get my lover back, I would give them the underworld Tao flower as a thank you gift," Ding Xiaoru replied. Li Yin clasped a hand over her chest with a pained expression. "You should have said that earlier. If you told me that you would give me the underworld Tao flower, I would have most likely already been with you." Even though she said that, she didn't raise any objections. She knew that if it weren't for the efforts of Enlin and the others, there was no way that she would have been able to recognize herself and return to Ding Xiaoru's side so quickly. Ding Xiaoru smiled before turning to Enlin and the others. "Come with me." Everyone arrived at the Sea of Flowers again, and Lin was a little excited. He could finally pluck flowers, eh? Chapter 16:11. The underworld Tao flower swayed from side to side with the wind. A group of flirtatious sluts were gorgeously dressed, releasing dazzling brilliance and stealing its limelight. However, it didn't want to compete with these flowers. After all, it couldn't compete with them anyway, so it could only play the role of a weirdo. The petals were like mushrooms clustered together, and there were all kinds of vivid expressions on them. Right at this moment, a few people flew over from the distance. "Mr. Lin, you can tame this underworld Dao flower and take it away," Ding Xiaoru said. A dejected expression appeared on the flower's face, and all 99 mushroom images suddenly appeared on its face, as if it were begging Ding Xiaoru to change his mind. Ding Xiaoru had already fallen in love, and he had no time to care about the feelings of a mere flower. He immediately terminated the beast pet contract in a very violent manner before latching onto Li Yin's hand and beginning to flirt with her. Having lost its beast pet contract connection, the underworld Dao flower was even more heartbroken at the sight of this and almost burst into tears. And Lin made his way over to the flower with a wide smile on his face. "My little flower, come with me. Tui!" The underworld Dao flower spat another mouthful of saliva onto Lin's face, and Lin licked the saliva with his tongue. "So sweet!" Ding Xiaoru. Li Yin, the underworld Dao flower saliva was its nectar, and it was a high-rank spirit, rank liquid. It was far more valuable than the saliva of a true dragon or ambergris, so Lin didn't want to waste it. The underworld Dao flower trembled with rage, but it couldn't do anything. "Come with me and acknowledge me as your master, and I'll make sure you live a lavish life." And Lin made a solemn vow. The underworld Dao flower was completely disdainful. Some of its petals pouted arrogantly while others rolled their eyes, clearly looking down on Lin. And Lin looked at the flower with a curious expression. "You've already attained Dao, so why can't you speak?" The underworld Dao flower chuckled coldly. "Is it because you're uncultured?" And Lin asked, "Tui." The underworld Dao flower spat with rage. "So sweet." And Lin was elated. Ding Xiaoru and Su Xiaolan were speechless. "That's enough, and Lin. If it doesn't want to, we'll just take it back by force and slowly train it." Su Xiaolan couldn't stand it anymore and took the initiative to speak up. And Lin's eyes lit up with excitement, and he asked, "Like how you trained little Huang?" A blush appeared on Su Xiaolan's jade-white face, and she whispered, "There's an outsider here. Why did you speak so loudly? It's not like it's an ability to be proud of." And Lin was elated. If this wasn't something to be proud of, then what was? He wanted to take this opportunity to learn more from Xiaolan and master the skill. The underworld Dao flower was instantly enraged upon hearing Xiaolan's words. Bah! It spat another mouthful of saliva at Su Xiaolan's face. F***CK off! Su Xiaolan's expression darkened as she abruptly swatted the nectar away with her hand. Holy flames materialized in her palm, and the underworld Dao flower was flattened into the ground. Squeak, squeak, squeak. The underworld Dao flower howled with anguish. All 99 flower petals had tears streaming down their faces. "I can't be bothered with you, but you're trying to take advantage of me? Do you want to die?" Su Xiaolan's brows furrowed as her killing intent froze the space around her. The underworld Dao flower had pissed itself in fear, and its nectar had spilled all over the ground. And Lin, Ding Xiaoru, and Li Yin were all astonished as they stared at the woman before them with fear in their eyes. They all knew that Su Xiaolan was serious, and the killing intent emanating from her body was also real. She really was getting impatient and wanted to destroy the underworld Dao flower. The underworld Dao flower had always been pampered and spoiled, and even the paramount god of the ghost tribe, Patriarch Zhuyin, had to take good care of it. It had lived like a proud princess and had never encountered a situation like this before. That's right, this was the first time in its entire life that it had ever felt such a strong sense of impending death. The underworld Dao flower didn't dare to do anything, and could only tremble uncontrollably as it was pinned to the ground by Su Xiaolan. "Apologize," Su Xiaolan said in an indifferent voice. All 99 flower petals of the underworld Dao flower began to weep in unison. Wah! Boom! The terrifying aura of the vermilion bird descended from the heavens. The aura of a holy beast that transcended beyond the three realms crashed down upon the underworld Dao flower. The woman's cold and menacing voice sounded. Can't you speak? I told you to apologize. Sorry. A tender and choppy voice sounded, and Lin and Tina were astonished. Not only could this flower create emoticons, but it could also speak, and its voice was quite pleasant to listen to. Slap. Su Xiaolan delivered another slap. I can't hear you. Louder. I'm sorry. The underworld, Dao flower, yelled at the top of its lungs. Who are you apologizing to? Su Xiaolan asked in a cold voice. I'm sorry, Su Xiaolan. The underworld, Dao flower yelled. What else? Su Xiaolan's slap was getting more and more forceful. I'm sorry, Lin. I'm sorry, Tina. I'm sorry, Ding Xiaoru. I'm sorry, Liyin. The underworld, Dao flower, yelled with tears streaming down its face. Gasp. Everyone drew a sharp intake of breath upon hearing this. All right, Lin, hurry up and establish the beast pet contract. Su Xiaolan clapped her little hands together as she turned to Lin with a I've done it, and its very simple expression on her face. Lin, Ding Xiaoru, can someone tell me what just happened? What the hell did the underworld Dao flower go through just now? He had to strike while the iron was hot, and Lin would be an idiot if he didn't seize this opportunity. He immediately set up a spell formation before releasing a drop of blood essence toward the underworld Dao flower. Don't resist. Accept this drop of blood essence, he said in a gentle voice. An expression of resistance appeared on the underworld Dao flower's face. Su Xiaolan's expression darkened upon seeing this. If you resist, Lin, then I'll be your master. The underworld Dao flower shuddered before immediately absorbing the drop of blood essence, as if it were afraid that Su Xiaolan would change her mind. So fragrant, and Lin could sense the faint connection between himself and the underworld Dao flower, and he knew that he had succeeded. He hugged Su Xiaolan with excitement and chortled with glee. Ha ha ha! Thank you, Xiaolan. You're the best. This flower is a lot easier to tame than Little Huang. I still have a lot of methods that I haven't used yet. Su Xiaolan was a little disappointed. She hadn't even used her full strength yet, and the underworld Dao flower had already given in. She still had more tricks up her sleeve. The underworld Dao flower had always been protected, and it shuddered upon hearing this. It suddenly felt like it was extremely fortunate that it had followed a master who was a little perverted, but not too fierce. And Lin stroked the underworld Dao flower with a smile. I'll give you a name. You're a flower that has attained enlightenment on your own, and you've received great fortune from heaven and earth. You're situated in the most dangerous place for undead creatures, and you're the most unique existence in the Permethal land. You can be said to be the emperor of flowers. The underworld Dao flower puffed out its chest with pride. How about I call you Little Mushroom? And Lin suggested, the underworld Dao flower. Chapter 1612. Little Mushroom? What the hell? The underworld Dao flower was completely dumbstruck. What did Lin's compliment just then have to do with the name Little Mushroom? Not only the underworld Dao flower, but even Ding Xiaoru and Liyin were also dumbstruck. Giant and Lin's naming skills have improved. In the past, he only used to use 2 words, but now he's using 3 words. Puffed. Su Xiaolan couldn't help but burst into laughter. The underworld Dao flower stared blankly at Lin. All 99 of its petals were completely dumbstruck, as if to say, "Are you serious?" And Lin stroked the petals with a doting smile. Little Mushroom, you're going to be called Little Mushroom from now on. It's so adorable and pleasing to the eye. Boom! The underworld Dao flower felt as if it had been struck by lightning, and it was rooted to the spot before a look of utter despair appeared on its face. I'm the underworld Tao flower that lives in the opposite shore realm, and I'm the emperor of all flowers. Yet I have to use a name like Little Mushroom. The underworld Tao flower really wanted to spit at Enlin. However, when it caught sight of Su Xiaolan, it inexplicably cowered and could only wipe away its tears. If it weren't for the fact that it was wary of Su Xiaolan, it wouldn't have been reduced to this state. By the way, Little Mushroom, do you know how to fight? And Lin asked. The underworld Tao flower faltered slightly before shaking its head and looking at Enlin with a cold expression. And Lin nodded upon hearing this. He wasn't expecting a flower that only knew how to spit saliva to fight. How about this? Go photosynthesize in Little Na's spatial pokeball first, and I'll bring you out after Little Lon, and I take care of our business, and Lin suggested. The underworld Tao flower faltered again. At this moment, a ball of light had already flown toward it. The ball of light split open, from within which burst forth a dazzling rainbow light, accompanied by an extremely powerful spatial suction force. No, the underworld Tao flower suddenly yelled with grief and indignation. I don't know how to photosynthesize. Hua! The underworld Tao flower had been sucked into the pokeball. The world suddenly fell silent, and Lin came to a sudden realization, and he clapped his hands together. That's right. There's no sun in the opposite shore realm. So how are the underworld Tao flowers supposed to survive? Ding Xiaoru's lips twitched, and he repressed the urge to retort as he patiently explained. The underworld Tao flower has already attained enlightenment, so there's no need for it to replenish its energy. Heaven and earth will bestow energy upon it, and Lin was astonished. The heavens are feeding it? Ding Xiaoru nodded. However, the infernal Tao flower likes Yin-type energy. If you want to make it more powerful, you can have it absorb more Yin Qi, Death Qi, Hell Qi, and Lin kept this in mind and kept nodding his head. As its master, he had to nurture his pet beast and make it stronger. This was something he had to be responsible for. Give her the Yin energy? Little Na can do it. Tina patted her little chest and adjusted the flow of vital energy within the pokeball before converging all of the Yin-type energy toward the underworld Tao flower. And Lin expressed his gratitude to Ding Xiaoru again. Thank you for the flower, Senior. Ding Xiaoru also expressed his gratitude to Enlin. Thank you, Mr. Enlin, for helping me find happiness again. The two of them exchanged pleasantries, as if they regretted not having met sooner. What are you going to do next, Mr. Enlin? Perhaps I can help you. Ding Xiaoru knew that Enlin and Su Xiaolan definitely hadn't come to the opposite shore realm just to have some fun. Perhaps he could be of some help as well? Air. And Lin suddenly didn't know what to say. Was he supposed to tell the truth? Was he supposed to go beat the crap out of the Dark Spirit King? One had to realize this was Patriarch Zhu Yin's territory. Was Patriarch Zhu Yin going to forgive him like he had forgiven Li Yin? Could it be that you have some difficulties, Mr. Enlin? Ding Xiaoru patted his chest upon seeing the conflicted expression on Enlin's face. Don't worry. Tell me if you have any difficulties, and I'll do my best to help you. To be honest, Enlin had helped him find his lover and return to the God of Creation stage, so he felt like a gift from the underworld Tao flower wasn't enough to express his gratitude. Setting aside their differences, Enlin could be considered a friend now. When a friend encountered a problem, especially in the opposite shore realm, Enlin was more than happy to lend a hand. Are you serious? Enlin asked after a momentary hesitation. Ding Xiaoru patted his chest. Why would I lie to you? Tell me. I swear on my name as Patriarch Zhu Yin that I'll do my best to help you, Mr. Enlin, if you encounter any difficulties in the opposite shore realm. You're the one who said that. Enlin paused momentarily before continuing. What I want to say is that Xiaolan and I came here to beat the crap out of the Dark Spirit King. Everyone suddenly fell silent. Ding Xiaoru's confident expression stiffened. What? Ding Xiaoru's face convulsed. I want to beat the crap out of the Dark Spirit King. And Lin replied, Ding Xiaoru, Liyin, air. Ding Xiaoru's flesh crawled. May I ask why Mr. and Lin wants to beat up the Dark Spirit King? He didn't have many dealings with the Dark Spirit King, but the Dark Spirit King was a Tao integration stage, super mighty figure of the opposite shore realm. After all, and it could be said to be the face of the opposite shore realm. And Lin wanted to beat up such a powerful being right in front of a paramount god of the ghost tribe. Wasn't that a slap to the face? Wait, didn't I just encourage Lin to say this? And I swore on my name as Patriarch Zhuyin that I'll do my best to help Mr. and Lin encounter any difficulties in the opposite shore realm. Ding Xiaoru wanted to throw up blood upon thinking of this. He had just slapped himself in the face. I just don't like the Dark Spirit King, so I want to beat it up. And Lin replied in a straightforward manner. Ding Xiaoru thought about it for a moment before asking, Is it because it joined the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army? And Lin nodded and didn't deny this. Ding Xiaoru massaged his brows with a vexed expression. How about this? We'll just beat it up and teach it a lesson. We won't beat it to death, all right? And Lin, Su Xiaolan, and Tina were all astonished upon hearing this. You mean us? And Lin was extremely incredulous. I said I would help you. And I swore on my name as Patriarch Zhuyin. Am I going to go back on my word? Ding Xiaoru spoke with an aggrieved expression. He was a paramount god of the ghost tribe, and he was going to follow through on his word, even if he had to shed tears. How could he go back on his word? Su Xiaolan still felt like this was extremely absurd. They should be thanking the heavens that Patriarch Zhu Yin wasn't going to stop them. But now he was volunteering to help them. Wasn't this a little too far-fetched? Really? Su Xiaolan couldn't help but reconfirm. Ding Xiaoru waved a hand through the air. I, Zhuyin, am a man of my word. I also know where the Dark Spirit King is, and I'll take you there right now. Chapter 1613. He was going to lead the way himself? And Lin and Su Xiaolan were astonished again. They were going to the enemy's base to beat up a super mighty figure boss. And the final boss, Patriarch Zhuyin, was going to lead the way himself? What the hell was going on? This service is way too good. And Lin was overwhelmed by the unexpected favor. It's just so. It's all because Mr. and Lin helped me get Ian back. Ding Xiaoru was a little exhausted. If he could turn back time, he definitely wouldn't have said something like that. However, he had already made a promise. And if he didn't fulfill it, then he would be utterly humiliated. But I have to reiterate, cripple or cripple it, don't kill it by any means. I don't have much to do with it, but I'm in charge of this place. Ding Xiaoru spoke again. There was another important reason why he was going with Enlin and the others, and that was to keep an eye on Enlin and make sure that Enlin didn't kill the Dark Spirit King. Enlin immediately replied, Don't worry, Senior, I just want to beat the crap out of it. If Patriarch Zhu Yin wasn't here, then the Dark Spirit King wouldn't be able to survive. Now that things had come to this, he could only give Patriarch Zhu Yin some face. Ding Xiaoru rose into the air with Li Yin in his arms. Come with me. And Lin, Su Xiaolan, and Tina followed behind Ding Xiaoru as they flew toward the northern region of the opposite shore realm. Everyone flew very quickly, and it didn't take them long to cover close to half of the opposite shore realm. And Lin and Ding Xiaoru were chatting idly, and most of the topics were related to the opposite shore realm. As the leader of the opposite shore realm, Ding Xiaoru was the most knowledgeable person on the entire continent. He told Lin everything he knew, and it was clear that he really did view Lin as a friend. There are yin and yang in heaven and earth. The opposite shore realm is a realm of extreme yin, which is the opposite of the southern heavenly wing nation's realm of extreme yang. The opposite shore realm is naturally blessed by the laws of the heavenly Tao, which can expel all yang energy, including the light of the sun, and converge yin energy. Ding Xiaoru slowly explained to Enlin, and Lin was quite intrigued, and he would ask a few questions from time to time. "By the way, I have a question for you." And Lin suddenly couldn't help but ask. "Go ahead." Ding Xiaoru was still as amiable and gentle as ever. May I ask which faction of the ghost tribe you belong to, Senior?" And Lin asked uneasily. Ding Xiaoru knew what Lin wanted to say. Right now, the ghost tribe was divided into the human exterminating faction, the heaven-crushing faction, and the neutral faction. And Lin was clearly afraid that he belonged to the human exterminating faction. If it wasn't for the fact that Ding Xiaoru didn't do it, and Lin definitely wouldn't trust a god of creation stage, ghost tribe, paramount god like him. Ding Xiaoru remained expressionless, and he replied with a smile, "I don't belong to any of the factions." And Lin was dumbstruck. "You're neutral." "No, I'm not even neutral." Ding Xiaoru shook his head. "Are there any other options?" And Lin's lips twitched. Ding Xiaoru's eyes were clear and gentle, but they seemed to be able to pierce through heaven and earth. His aura suddenly became ethereal, as if he were a paramount god that had descended upon this world. The representatives of the heavenly Tao descended upon this world, and a massive war ensued. There are the Annihilation faction that advocates cooperating with the heavenly gods to wipe out the entire human race in order to win the favor of the representatives of the heavenly Tao and convince the heavenly Tao to spare the lives of all other races. There are the heaven-crushing faction that refuses to accept that their fate has been decided by the heavenly Tao. They advocate uniting with the human race to wipe out all of the representatives of the heavenly Tao, and they even want to replace the incomplete heavenly Tao. There are also the heaven-crushing faction that wavers on the fence, and there are also the heaven-mending faction that wants to repair the flaws in the heavenly Tao. There are many choices in this world, but all of them are made on the basis of survival. As for me, I've already transcended beyond this mortal world, so I won't die. Why should I make a mortal choice? Ding Xiaoru looked at Lin with a faint smile. "You won't die." And Lin faltered slightly before asking. The heavenly Tao and the heavenly life god are the two paramount representatives of the heavenly Tao. Ding Xiaoru clasped his hands behind his back. "What can those heavenly Tao powers do to me? Even if their powers aren't restricted, as long as I hide in the world I've created, I'm the heavens. I'll kill every foreign, heavenly Tao power that comes my way." The domineering manner in which the purple-robed man spoke caused Lin and Su Xiaolan's hearts to tremble. They were once again struck by the domineering aura of a god of creation. So, this calamity that has affected the entire continent is actually harmless to god of creation stage beings? Su Xiaolan murmured to herself. Ding Xiaoru nodded. The worst-case scenario is that we won't be able to go to the Tai Chu continent. No wonder the other god of creation stage gods on the Tai Chu continent haven't done anything aside from Cyril of the true demon tribe. And Lin's brows furrowed tightly. Ding Xiaoru waved a hand with a smile. There are still many gods of creation who are concerned about the living beings on this continent. They won't die, but this is their land, and there are countless descendants and brethren living here. Those powerful beings won't just abandon you. However, now is not the best time for them to intervene. If a god of creation interferes, they will oppose the heavenly Tao and face boundless backlash from the heavenly Tao. The heavenly Tao is extremely sensitive to the actions of god of creation stage gods. When that time comes, they will have no choice but to hide in their own worlds and not dare to set foot on the Tai Chu continent again. This is not the outcome they want, so they have to secure victory with a single strike. And Lin nodded with enlightenment. At the same time, he was a little perplexed. He had always thought that Chun-Chin was also a god of creation. After all, he had even used the spotless realm. However, Chun-Chin and the heavenly earth god didn't suffer any backlash. Why was he still prancing around as if nothing had happened? Could it be that Chun-Chin wasn't a god of creation stage cultivator? Then, what cultivation base was he at? And Lin was able to understand the awkward situation that the gods of creation were in through Ding Xiaoru's explanation. At the same time, he also learned about their attitude and their path of retreat. They might not necessarily fight to the death for the Tai Chu continent. This was very unsettling news. No wonder Ding Xiaoru was willing to befriend a representative of the heavenly Tao. He didn't care about the representative of the heavenly Tao at all. Wait, a thought flashed through in Lin's mind, and he said with excitement, "You're saying that the gods of creation can resist the heavenly Tao in their own worlds. If the gods of creation transfer the entire human race into their worlds, wouldn't the heavenly Tao be unable to do anything?" Chapter 16:14. Ding Xiaoru shook his head with a resigned expression upon hearing this. "I said that I can remain immortal because I am the heavens of that world. As for other living beings, even if they escape to my world, they will still suffer backlash from the heavenly Tao, as the heavens I created are on a lower level than the heavenly Tao of the Tai Chu continent. It's like how I created a small, independent box within a big box. The big box can't destroy the small box, which is me, but it can continue to influence the living beings within the small box through its omnipresent power. In other words, I am invincible, but I can't guarantee the safety of the living beings within the world I created. The human race is a race that the heavenly Tao is determined to destroy, so they won't allow the human race to survive in the gods of creation's world. The power of the heavenly Tao will only make them die even faster." And Lin was still a little perplexed. If the heavenly God of life and the heavenly God of heaven decide to wipe out all living beings on this continent, what will happen to Li Yin if she's not a god of creation? Ding Xiaoru smiled. "Even though I can't protect all living beings, I can protect Yin with all my might. I don't need your protection. I want to progress to the Tao integration stage, then progress to the God of creation stage, so I can be with you forever." Li Yin pouted as she looked at Ding Xiaoru. The two of them couldn't help but smile at each other as they hugged tightly. It was an extremely sweet scene, and Lin didn't look at them. Instead, he turned to Tina with a curious expression. "How many people can you protect?" "I don't know. I don't have a good understanding of the power of the heavenly Tao of the main continent, but I think Ding Xiaoru can only protect one person with all his might. I'm not even at the God of creation stage, so I can probably protect half a person." Tina guessed with a blink of her green eyes, and Lin, that was a stab to the heart. "However, if I make the divine mirror world more powerful than the main Tai Chu continent and make my box bigger than the box on the Tai Chu continent, then the heavenly Tao won't be able to do anything to me, right?" Tina suddenly asked. Ding Xiaoru couldn't help but burst into laughter upon hearing this. "That's impossible. Even Pangu couldn't create a second Tai Chu continent after creating the Tai Chu continent. The Tai Chu continent is the most primordial existence, and no world can replace it." "Oh," Tina nodded, but she didn't think so. Her divine mirror world was progressing very quickly. What if she succeeded? If even a goddess of creation didn't have the confidence to surpass the Tai Chu continent and set a limit for herself, then the world she created would really be limited. Rather than creating a world that's more powerful than the Tai Chu continent, it's more realistic to cultivate and become a being above the God of creation stage. Of course, this reality is only relative to creating a world more powerful than the Tai Chu continent. This method is also unrealistic for us. Ding Xiaoru said with a smile, "As far as I know, only Pangu, the god born from chaos, can surpass the great Tao of heaven and earth and attain true transcendence. The others can't take that step in the end. When facing the power of the heavenly Tao, we can only hide in the world we created. However, if it was in existence above the creation stage and had already attained the supreme godly seat, transcending the entire world, heaven and earth are destroyed, but they are still alive. Where can they go?" Even the paramount god of the ghost tribe, Patriarch Zhuyin, was filled with yearning as he spoke. "Transcend the Tao of heaven and earth." And Lin murmured. A thought seemed to have occurred to him, and his expression shifted slightly. "Are you talking about the heavenly true immortal?" He had a system mission regarding a high-rank war god mystic technique known as the Dark Immortal Transformation. He had to obtain the essential remains of the heavenly true immortal and consume it in order to complete the mission. Heavenly true immortal? Patriarch Zhu Yin stroked his chin. That sounds a little familiar. Pangu referred to himself as the chaotic patriarch god, so he definitely wouldn't call himself a true immortal. I recall that the destruction of the ancient Tai Chu realm had something to do with the heavenly true immortal, and Lin's heart jolted upon hearing this. He had heard from the celestial Darch that information about the heavenly true immortal was recorded on a stone tablet in the ancient Tai Chu realm. It looked like he would have to make a trip to the ancient Tai Chu realm if he wanted to obtain more information. Even Patriarch Zhu Yin didn't know much about the heavenly true immortal, and Lin didn't pry any further. However, he was a little disappointed that his previous speculation had been useless. Even God of Creation, stage mighty figures, could only protect themselves in the face of attacks from the heavenly Tao. It was extremely difficult to protect others. At the end of the day, the human race had no path of retreat. They had to either crush the heavens or mend the heavens. Nuwa was the god of creation of the spirit demon tribe. So was the heaven-mending sect really reliable? The heaven-crushing sect had given the human race a lot of hope. But the leader of the heaven-crushing sect was Cyril, the god of creation of the true demon tribe. Would he really protect the human race wholeheartedly? Perhaps he didn't even want to protect all living beings on the Tai Chu continent in the first place. His true goal was to use the power of the human race to crush the heavens and replace them. Also, what were the other gods of creation doing? The heavenly lord of primordial beginning, Pangu, was a being above the god of creation stage, so the heavenly lord of numinous treasure and the heavenly lord of Tao and virtue were at least at the god of creation stage as well. What were they doing? Tao Lord Lu Ye was also at the god of creation stage, so what was he doing? And Lin didn't know what those mighty figures were thinking, but he knew that it was better to rely on himself than on others. Right now, he had to improve himself as quickly as possible. In the northern region of the opposite shore realm, there was a vast expanse of dark sky and a vibrant, colorful earth. There were countless black mountain peaks that rose from the ground like sharp swords. Some of them were several thousand feet tall, and they stood upright like divine swords. Some of them were over 100,000 feet tall, and they pierced through the heavens. All of the mountain peaks were extremely steep, and there were all types of black mist revolving around them. This was one of the most terrifying types of energy in the opposite shore realm, the dark earth energy. Among the countless mountain peaks, there was a gargantuan mountain that was over 30,000 feet tall. This was the center of the entire northern region of the opposite shore realm. Boundless dark earth energy converged here, making the mountain peak stand upright like a black sword. It was extremely sharp, like the scythe of the Grim Reaper, but also like the abyss of despair. At the same time, this was also the location of one of the 10 major cities of the opposite shore realm, Tianming City. The city was built along the mountain peak, and it spiraled up to the summit of the mountain peak. The streets were like winding dragons, and the countless pavilions were constructed in an extremely dangerous manner. Some of them even protruded out of the cliffs, while others floated in the air. They couldn't even be bothered to build bridges. However, the living beings here were already used to this. It didn't matter if the buildings were high or dangerous. This was because they could all float. Most adult members of the ghost tribe had mastered the ability to float for a long or short period of time. If they couldn't float, they would be too embarrassed to admit that they were members of the ghost tribe. And Lin, Su Xiaolan, Tina, Ding Xiaoru, and Li Yin all wore black robes, and they also did as the Romans do, and they floated all the way up Tianming City. Chapter 1615. Ding Xiaoru wanted to empathize with the people, which was why he suggested that they disguise themselves as a normal ghost before slowly drifting through the streets. And Lin's lips twitched as he looked at the two of them, who were holding hands as they strolled through the streets. This wasn't empathizing with the people, This was more like accompanying a Tao partner on a vacation. All of the living beings along the way were drifting through the air. The street lights were all dark green and dark red, and one could only see a series of black shadows drifting around them. From Enlin's perspective, the scenery was extremely bad. However, Ding Xiaoru and Li Yin were having so much fun that they had almost forgotten that they were here to do business. And Lin held onto Su Xiaolan's soft hand as they strolled through the streets in a bored manner. Don't miss out on this opportunity. The Dark Spirit King is full of praise for this dark meat. It's extremely delicious. It looks, smells, and tastes great. 2 spirit stones for 1. You'll feel extremely refreshed and invigorated. A skeleton with black fur on its back was yelling from a shop, and Lin's attention was drawn toward that direction. That shop was selling a local delicacy. It was a ball of inky black rotten meat with bursts of dark energy revolving around it and emanating a foul stench. Su Xiaolan's brows furrowed slightly with disdain. Is this really delicious? And Lin repressed the urge to vomit, and he was also quite disdainful. You're going to die if you eat this, right? What shocked them was that there were actually quite a few people lining up at the side, and some were even eating with relish, chewing the rotten meat with great enjoyment. Erg. Su Xiaolan couldn't help but throw up as a sign of respect. Tina blinked with curiosity in her eyes as a bold idea occurred to her. Giant and Lin, I want to try it. Tina said, if you really want to eat something that's disgusting, then don't lie on my shoulder after you eat it. And Lin didn't disguise his disdain toward the dark meat at all. He didn't lower his volume. An 8-armed blue fire ghost that happened to pass by was annoyed. It floated in front of Enlin and said, What's wrong? Are you looking down on our Tianming city's dark cuisine? And Lin was astonished. Doesn't dark cuisine mean that they look down on me? How was it that this blue fire wraith was able to say such a thing without batting an eyelid? He glanced at the blue fire ghost, shrugged, and continued to walk forward, too lazy to care about it. Wait, you insulted our Tianming city's dark cuisine, and you still want to leave? The blue fire ghost quickly floated in front of Enlin as it spoke with an enraged expression. And Lin was speechless. I'm talking about how disgusting the dark meat seller is. Why are you, a road ghost, sticking your nose into other people's business? Roar. Disgusting? How dare you say that our Tianming city's signature dark meat is disgusting? Blue flame ghost fire flared up, and the dark blue flames soared 30 feet into the air. And Lin was astonished. This spirit-nurturing stage piece of trash was yelling at him. The blue fire ghost pointed at Enlin with an enraged expression. The dark meat is a specialty snack created by the Dark Spirit King, and all of our ghost tribe members are full of praise for it. How dare you insult a snack created by the Dark Spirit King? I'm just giving a simple comment. It's up to you whether you like the snack or not. Also, what does this have to do with you? And Lin's expression darkened. The altercation between Enlin and the blue fire ghost attracted the attention of all the nearby road ghosts. The blue fire ghost pulled out a black crystalline minotaur hat from its storage ring before placing it on its head. All of the ghosts let loose cries of surprise. It's a Tianming hat. Ah, so it's a soldier of Tianming City. No wonder it's already at the spirit-nurturing stage at such a young age. It's a prodigy who joined the Northern First Army of the opposite shore realm. I heard that black-robed ghost insulted the dark meat right in front of it. He looks like we're in for a good show. The blue fire ghost raised its proud head upon hearing the commotion around it. It extended all 8 of its hands before pointing at Enlin, Su Xiaolan, and Tina in a cold voice. You've insulted the Dark Spirit King in public. Come with me to the Tianming City judgment ground to be judged. And Lin faltered slightly upon hearing this. I only said the dark meat is disgusting. I didn't insult the Dark Spirit King. The blue fire ghost's flames erupted for over 100 feet. You still dare to say it's disgusting? I told you, this is a specialty snack created by the Dark Spirit King. So insulting the dark meat is the same as insulting it. You can't taint anything that belongs to it. Its eyes shone with a scorching light as it spoke with an extremely excited expression, and Lin's heart stirred, and he yelled at the purple-robed man who was inspecting the skeleton artwork nearby, "Ding Xiaoru, come over here and tell me what you think of this dark meat." The purple-robed man made his way over with a woman in a colorful dress in his hand. Li Yin's eyes widened with disgust as she stared at the lumps of black rotten meat with a few black worms squirming on its surface. What the hell is this? It's so disgusting. Ding Xiaoru looked at the relatively pure dark energy on the rotten meat and offered an objective evaluation. Extracting dark energy from rotten meat and dark worms is not a bad method. The combination of the rotten meat and dark worms can help preserve the dark energy. However, eating it just like that is really disgusting. All right, you dare to insult the Dark Spirit King? Come on, ghosts. Tie them up. The blue fire ghost roared. Ding Xiaoru. Its voice had only just fallen when a few armored ghosts suddenly appeared among the onlookers. They pressed their ghostly claws against everyone's necks, as if they were going to stab into everyone's necks at any moment. Ding Xiaoru's expression darkened. Do you know what you're trying to tie up? I don't care who you are. The blue fire ghost chuckled coldly. This is the Dark Spirit King's territory. Even if you're a return to Void Stage mighty figure, you still have to be punished for insulting the Dark Spirit King. In Tianming City, the Dark Spirit King is the paramount god, and this is the sky. All of the onlookers hooted in unison. Tie them up! Tie them up! Tie them up! How dare you insult the Dark Spirit King in public? You deserve to die. Trash like this should be fed to dark worms. The ghosts all shared a common enemy, cruel smiles on their faces. Ding Xiaoru was dumbstruck. Was this the norm in Tianming City nowadays? He couldn't even say anything about the Dark Spirit King here. No, he wasn't talking about the Dark Spirit King at all. He couldn't even talk about dark meat. An amused smile appeared on Lin's face as he looked at Ding Xiaoru. Put the soul-locking cuffs on me. The blue fire ghost was still as arrogant as ever. Even if the Dark Spirit King were here, it wouldn't dare to speak to me like this, Ding Xiaoru said in an indifferent voice. You're still flexing. I think you must be tired of living. The blue fire ghost stretched out its 8 arms and grabbed at Ding Xiaoru. Chapter 16:16. The blue fire ghost's 8 flaming hands were extremely fast, and they reached the purple-robed man in the blink of an eye. However, at the same time, a peculiar power appeared in the air like a barrier. The 8 fiery hands that were moving swiftly and violently were actually stopped in their tracks. What? The blue fire ghost's expression shifted. No wonder you were so arrogant. So you're a soul formation stage or return to void stage mighty figure. The blue fire ghost chuckled coldly. It instantly realized that this intruder was no ordinary being, but it was still not afraid. This was Tianming City, the territory of the Dark Spirit King, and no one dared to offend the Dark Spirit King here. Ha ha ha. All right, seeing as you're a powerful ghost tribe cultivator, you can also be exempted from the judgment. The blue fire ghost's expression softened a little. Oh, Ding Xiaoru was a little surprised. These so-called lackeys of the Dark Spirit King weren't all that unreasonable and lawless. At the very least, they had a certain level of respect and reverence toward powerful beings. In the next instant, the blue fire ghost pointed at the summit of the mountain. Kneel and kowtow to the Dark Spirit King in the clouds right here, and I'll exempt you from the judgment. Everyone suddenly fell silent. And Lin, Su Xiaolan drew a sharp intake of breath. Tina secretly swallowed a mouthful of saliva. A thought appeared in their minds at the same time. This blue fire ghost was bad *SS. Even a freak like Enlil didn't dare to say something like this to Ding Xiaoru. But this blue fire ghost dared to tell Ding Xiaoru to kneel, and Cao the ignorant were fearless, and this was a perfect example of this. You want me to kneel and kowtow to the Dark Spirit King? Ding Xiaoru's eyes gradually lit up. Rumble, wind, and clouds suddenly surged between heaven and earth. Huh? Is it going to rain? The blue fire ghost looked up at the sky, and it felt as if there were massive beasts roaring in the distance, striking it with a sense of pressure. If you want to kneel, then kneel. You don't have the King right to do that. If you're not going to kneel, then come with me to the Judgment Plaza. The Dark Spirit King just so happened to come out of seclusion, and it'll be able to witness the tragic consequences you suffer when you humiliate it, haha. The flames around the blue fire ghost's body trembled with laughter. It wasn't worried that the Dark Spirit King would attack it. After all, killing an Imperial Guard in Tianming City was the equivalent of directly challenging the Dark Spirit King, and that was a capital crime. All right, let's see if the Dark Spirit King can force me to my knees. Ding Xiaoru was so enraged that he burst into laughter. Lead the way. I'll come with you to the Judgment Plaza. You're quite sensible. The blue fire ghost snorted coldly. Tianming City has its own rules. There's no use resisting. If you obediently accept your punishment, you might be able to keep your life. After it finished speaking, it began to float to the top of the mountain. At the same time, a ball of flame began to carry Enlil and the others all the way to the top of the huge mountain. A few armored imps used their ghostly claws to block them and flew all the way up into the sky. Enlil silently sympathized with the blue fire ghost, worrying about its future. Would it be able to live for another 2 hours or 4 hours? That was the question. However, its life had not been in vain. Being able to hurl abuse at the paramount god of the ghost tribe and force it to kneel and kowtow to him was already the pinnacle of its ghostly life. Just this experience alone was enough to completely crush countless mighty figures. At the Judgment Plaza of Tianming City, this was a place where all types of criminals were judged. The blue fire ghost had already reported what it had encountered to its superiors, and it had received permission to participate in the judgment. Apparently, the Dark Spirit King, who had just come out of seclusion, was also going to attend the judgment. Perhaps it had nothing better to do, or perhaps it wanted to have some fun. This had alerted some of the higher-ups of Tianming City, and many ghost tribe powerful beings also flew toward the Judgment Plaza to join in on the fun. The blue fire ghost was in an extremely good mood. Never would it have thought that a simple judgment would attract so many important figures to spectate. This was a great opportunity for it to showcase itself. Perhaps it could even win over He Piaomei and reach the pinnacle of its ghostly life. That's right, judging a living being that disrespected the Dark Spirit King was a great achievement, especially when it was being judged in front of so many people. On the massive plaza that was paved with black dark crystals, tens of thousands of powerful ghost tribe powerful beings had already gathered here to spectate the show. There were ghost saber execution platforms, soul grinding execution platforms, infernal flame execution platforms. There were hundreds of execution platforms of all shapes and sizes. The judges would make judgments based on the crimes that the criminal had committed, then execute the criminal. There were many types of consequences for disrespecting the Dark Spirit King. The most severe punishment was the death penalty, while the least severe punishment was some ordinary physical punishment. At this moment, a monster with a western dragon body and 9 twisted black heads was lying on a high round throne, looking down at the judgment field. It was shrouded in a cold and dark aura. The 9 black heads corresponded to 9 different types of primordial beasts, and all of them exuded terrifying auras that were powerful enough to crush the heavens. This was the ruler of the northern region of the opposite shore realm, the Dark Spirit King that ruled over billions of ghostly soldiers. The Dark Spirit King had just come out of seclusion, and its dark earth energy had been perfected. so it was in an extremely good mood, and it was in a good mood to spectate the judgment. Among the tens of thousands of Ghost Tribe powerful beings, there are some extremely important powerful beings and mighty figures who offered congratulatory gifts to the Dark Spirit King. As for judging minor characters, they weren't interested. They were only taking this rare opportunity to congratulate the Dark Spirit King, who had just emerged from seclusion. "Get up there! Hurry up!" The Blue Fire Ghost yelled at Enlin and the others. Enlin, Su Xiaolan, Ding Xiaoru, and the others were being held hostage by a few ghostly soldiers as they slowly drifted toward the center of the Judgment Plaza. "Kneel!" The Blue Fire Ghost roared. "The Dark Spirit King is going to judge all of you in person today, so it's an honor for all of you." The Blue Fire Ghost yelled in a particularly loud voice, as if it was trying to show off. Regardless of whether it was Enlin or Ding Xiaoru, neither of them moved as they stood silently on the spot. It was impossible to see their faces under their black robes. The tens of thousands of Ghost Tribe powerful beings on the Judgment Plaza were all looking at the two of them as if they were enjoying a good show. Some sneered coldly, some were mocking expressions, and some shook their heads in resignation. The Dark Spirit King has only just come out of seclusion, and these unlucky bastards are going to walk right into its trap. I wonder if the Dark Spirit King is going to show them mercy or make them suffer a fate worse than death, so that all living beings in this world know that its might cannot be challenged. They don't seem to be kneeling. Apparently they're quite powerful, but they're so arrogant. Looks like they're going to become the Dark Spirit King's pitiful victims. All of the Ghost Tribe powerful beings looked at the living beings that didn't kneel, and the disdain in their eyes became even more pronounced. The Dark Spirit King's 9 eyes narrowed slightly as killing intent surged from its body. "Why aren't you kneeling in front of me?" Ding Xiaoru raised his head slightly to reveal his eyes. "Who do you think you are to make me kneel?" Chapter 16:17. Boom! This was like a clap of thunder that struck all of the ghosts' ears. All of the tens of thousands of Ghost Tribe powerful beings were given a fright upon hearing this. How could this ghost say things like the Dark Spirit King was nothing? Was it tired of living? The Blue Fire Ghost was completely dumbstruck. Never would it have thought that the living being it had brought would dare to insult the Dark Spirit King on the spot. This was no longer something that could be explained by mere courage. "Stupid piece of trash! How dare you insult the Dark Spirit King?" the Blue Fire Ghost roared as its 8 tentacles lashed toward Ding Xiaoru. Li'in opened her dazzling eyes, and a colorful energy soul sword suddenly appeared in the air before instantly pinning the Blue Fire Ghost to the ground. "Ah!" The Blue Fire Ghost howled with agony. It could feel its consciousness being incinerated relentlessly. This was pain that struck deep into its soul. It was quite clear that Li'in didn't want to kill it. Instead, she wanted to torture it. "How dare you harm our heavenly Dark Imperial Guards?" 6 ghost generals pounced toward Li'in while unleashing all types of soul formation stage domains. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. 6 colorful energy soul swords appeared in the air before stabbing down at an extremely terrifying speed, pinning the oncoming ghost generals to the Judgment Plaza. The blood-curdling cries of the ghost generals erupted throughout the entire Judgment Plaza. Another insta-kill. Li'in didn't move a single step. In fact, she didn't even avert her gaze as she stood silently on the spot. This created a massive stir throughout the entire Judgment Plaza. Those ghost generals are returned to Void Stage mighty figures. No wonder they have such a bad temper. Even returned to Void Stage mighty figures have to kneel before the Dark Spirit King. They don't know what's good for them and have angered the Spirit King. They're just courting death. Sigh, how stupid! All of the Ghost Tribe powerful beings' expressions became even more disdainful and disdainful. In this place, the Dark Spirit King was like a god, the most powerful being that couldn't be offended. No Ghost Tribe Cultivator dared to piss it off, as only death awaited them. Who do I think I am? The Dark Spirit King murmured to itself as its massive body slowly rose to its feet. Its 9 twisted, beastly heads looked down at everyone on the Judgment Plaza. I control the life and death of the dark, dark realm, and I am the feudal lord of the northern part of the opposite shore realm. I am the king who rules over a radius of several million kilometers, and I am the god of billions of ghostly soldiers. To me, you are just ants. Its aura began to erupt with a loud rumble. It was as if the might of the heavens was crashing down upon them, making it difficult for the ghost race powerhouses to even breathe. It's over. The Dark Spirit King is completely enraged now. Humph! I, Bull Corpse King, have finally seen what a real idiot is. Haha! I'm sure they'll be squashed by the Dark Spirit King very soon. The ghoul powerhouses were all looking at the beings at the center of the arena with great excitement. None of them would have thought that they would be able to judge a return to void stage mighty figure during a normal judgment. This was a once-in-a-century entertainment event. The Dark Spirit King spoke in an indifferent voice. The gods won't be enraged by ants disrespecting them. If they feel like they're an eyesore, they can just stomp them to death. After it finished speaking, one of its 9 heads, the ghost monkey head, opened its scarlet mouth, and a pitch-black nether aura gushed out from within. It was like a dark waterfall, and wherever it passed, the void would shatter and all vitality would be absorbed and devoured by this nether aura. And Lin was astonished. I understand that, but why did it attack me first? Why hadn't the Dark Spirit King attacked Li'in first or Ding Xiaoru first? Why hadn't the Dark Spirit King attacked Li'in first or Ding Xiaoru first? This was way too illogical. The Dark Spirit King was still wearing a mocking sneer on its face. It was naturally not going to kill the ants that were talking back to it. It was going to kill the other ants to intimidate the 2 nearby ants. It was going to grant them fear and despair before slowly torturing them to death. It's here. That's the Dark Spirit King's dark, earthly energy. What terrifying divine Tao might! The dark, earthly energy is the most poisonous dark energy in the entire opposite shore realm. It's born in the land of extreme Yin in the veins of the earth. Not only does it freeze the heavens, but it's also invincible. Those who are struck by it will die in excruciating pain as their divine sense is slowly devoured. It's using its most powerful attack right off the bat. Is it trying to kill a chicken with a butcher's knife? Tens of thousands of ghosts hurtled back in retreat with astonishment on their faces. They didn't want to be affected by the shock waves of the battle. A purple-robed man also instantly appeared before Lin before gently waving a sleeve through the air. Bam! The netherworld aura was like a cloud, dissipating into thin air with a pat of the sleeve. It didn't leave any trace in this world. What? The Dark Spirit King shuddered as incredulity appeared in all 9 of its eyes. The tens of thousands of ghost-powerful beings stared blankly at the scenes unfolding before their eyes. That ghost had dispelled the Dark Spirit King's most powerful attack with a casual wave of his hand? One had to realize that the Dark Spirit King was a Tao integration stage, super mighty figure. Who are you? The Dark Spirit King was a little panicked. Who am I? Ding Xiaoru removed his black robe and clasped his hands behind his back as he stared at the Dark Spirit King with a cold expression. Open your stupid eyes and take a good look. The Dark Spirit King's eyes widened as it stared at the man with a dumbstruck expression. So who are you? Everyone fell silent. Only then did Ding Xiaoru realize that he was still in his human form. However, if he were to reveal his 1,000-kilometer true body, the entire Tianming city would probably be crushed by him. Boom! A burst of paramount, divine, might suddenly erupted forth. All of the ghost tribe powerful beings were struck by a sense of oppression. A figure with crimson dragon scales that were as dazzling as the sun appeared in the sky above. This was Patriarch Zhu Yin's projection of the Dharma projection. His true body hadn't appeared, But just the projection alone was enough to make all of the hundreds of millions of ghost tribe powerful beings in Tianming City tremble uncontrollably as they looked up at the projection in the sky. What the hell is that thing? It's so terrifying. I can't even move. All of the ghost tribe powerful beings on the judgment platform were astonished. Could it be? Patriarch Zhuyin? No way. That purple-robed man. All of the ghost tribe powerful beings' eyes widened as waves of shock surged through their hearts. Even the mighty Dark Spirit King was trembling uncontrollably. It wasn't an idiot, and it could naturally sense that peerlessly terrifying power even more clearly than the average ghost tribe powerful being. This was definitely not a being it could mess with. It was a Tao integration stage, super mighty figure, but it couldn't muster up any thoughts of resistance. Ding Xiaoru took a step forward and looked at the Dark Spirit King with a cold expression. Do you still dare to make me kneel to you? Chapter 1618. The purple-robed man's identity was already quite apparent. No matter how unbelievable it was, the truth was right before their eyes, and they couldn't deny it no matter how absurd it was. That's right, this man was the paramount god of the ghost tribe, Patriarch Zhuyin. As for making the paramount god of the ghost tribe kneel and kowtow in apology, the Dark Spirit King knelt onto the judgment platform with a thump, and its 9 heads slammed into the ground as it kowtowed over and over again. Patriarch Zhuyin, I was wrong. Please be merciful and spare my life. This mighty figure was now kowtowing over and over again like a child who had made a mistake. Bam, bam, bam. The Dark Spirit King slammed its heads into the ground over and over again, as if it was trying to express its apology. It was still a high and mighty god just a second ago, looking down at Ding Xiaoru as if he were an ant. In the next second, the roles had been reversed, and it had become the ant that was being stomped on the ground. However, it had to be said that the Dark Spirit King had reacted very quickly. If it had continued to flex, Ding Xiaoru wouldn't have minded slapping it to death. The blue fire ghost that had been pinned to the ground by Li Yin's sword stared blankly at the scenes unfolding before its eyes. The man it had been cursing at was the paramount god of the ghost tribe, the most powerful king in the entire opposite shore realm. It wanted Patriarch Zhuyin to kneel and kowtow to the Dark Spirit King. Now, the Dark Spirit King was kneeling and kowtowing to Patriarch Zhuyin in apology F***CK. What the hell had I done? Boundless horror and remorse almost engulfed the blue fire ghost. At this moment, Ding Xiaoru slowly made his way over to the Dark Spirit King before stomping a foot onto one of its heads, upon which the other 8 heads were glued to the ground, not daring to move. I said, "The dark meat you created is very disgusting. Do you concede?" Ding Xiaoru asked. "Yes, I concede." The Dark Spirit King's voice trembled as it spoke. "Is the dark meat you created disgusting?" Ding Xiaoru increased the force of his foot as he continued. The Dark Spirit King was on the verge of tears. Disgusting. Super disgusting. At this moment, all of the ghost tribe powerful beings present came to a sudden realization as to why things had turned out this way. Patriarch Zhuyin had criticized the dark meat as disgusting, and the Dark Royal Guard had refused to accept this and brought him here to be judged. Countless pairs of eyes involuntarily turned to look at the blue fire ghost that was impaled on the ground. The Dark Spirit King's eyes seemed to be able to kill as it glared at the blue fire ghost with resentment. This was all because of this blue fire ghost. If it hadn't interfered with Patriarch Zhuyin and provoked him, Patriarch Zhuyin wouldn't have come here. If Patriarch Zhuyin really was enraged, then all of the ghost tribe beings present could be killed. After all, Patriarch Zhuyin was no saint. He was a demon that had dominated the entire ghost tribe. Everything was the blue fire wraith's fault. Everything was the blue fire wraith's fault. The ghost tribe did not think about the true reason for this outcome. They only wanted to use the blue fire ghost as an outlet for their emotions. This was the first time that the blue fire ghost was being stared at by so many powerful beings of the ghost race. However, all of these gazes were filled with boundless rage and resentment. Tens of thousands of eyes stared at it, and it screamed in fear. Ah! Mournful cries resounded throughout the judgment field. The blue fire ghost's flames first exploded, then quickly dimmed and extinguished, its soul splitting and dissipating. After a while, there were no signs of life. Was it scared to death? And Lynn was astonished. It was scared to death, Tina replied in an indifferent voice. The spirit-nurturing stage blue fire ghost of the heavenly dark Imperial Guard was scared out of its wits by the furious glares of so many ghost tribe mighty figures. Ding Xiaoru didn't even take a second glance at it. To him, the blue fire ghost was like a speck of dust that could be blown away at any time. He turned to the dark spirit king with a hint of interest in his eyes, and a hint of a smile appeared on his face. I, Zhu Yin, have lived for countless years, and no one has ever dared to speak to me like this. Do you really think I'll forgive you just by kowtowing a few times? I'm willing to accept any punishment. The dark spirit king trembled uncontrollably. All it wanted now was to survive. The most powerful being of the northern region of the opposite shore realm? Even the gods of the northern region of the opposite shore realm could only crawl and beg for mercy in the face of Patriarch Zhu Yin. This was because Patriarch Zhu Yin was a true god. Ding Xiaoru slowly removed his foot from the dark spirit king's head. All right, I'll give you a chance to live. I'm here to do a favor for a friend of mine. Do a favor for a friend? The dark spirit king reflexively turned toward the other three black-robed living beings. If Patriarch Zhu Yin's friend needs help, then I, the dark spirit king, am willing to do anything to help him. It lowered its stance and spoke in an extremely enthusiastic manner. You've got to be kidding me. Patriarch Zhu Yin was here in person, so he had to earn as many points as he could. Perhaps he could even receive some guidance from Patriarch Zhu Yin. That would truly be a blessing in disguise. If Patriarch Zhu Yin needs anything from us, feel free to let us know. A return to Void Stage, mighty figure said. That's right. We'll do everything in our power to fulfill the Patriarch's request. Many great figures of the ghost race also began to speak. They raised their hands and forcefully increased their favorability points. Ding Xiaoru nodded slightly before looking at the dark spirit king. That friend of mine wants to beat the crap out of you, so I'm here to help. The air suddenly became quiet. All of the ghost tribe mighty figures drew a sharp intake of breath. They had just been scrambling to help Patriarch Zhu Yin beat the crap out of the dark spirit king. The dark spirit king's entire body trembled. It had just been fighting for an opportunity to help Patriarch Zhu Yin's friend beat itself up. It was beating itself up? What the hell was going on? How could this be? Why is this happening? The dark spirit king's entire body was like a Spartan, and it looked like it had been played to death. Could this be fate playing tricks on it? The mighty paramount god of the ghost tribe, the renowned Patriarch Zhu Yin, had come here to help his friend beat up a ghost tribe Dao integration stage super mighty figure. The dark spirit king looked at the black-robed figures before it with a confused expression. Who are you? Why are you beating me up? It was thinking back to all of its past enemies, trying to figure out which Dao integration stage super mighty figure had come to seek revenge. And Lin and Su Xiaolan didn't waste any more time with words, and they immediately took off their black robes. A man in a flowing white robe and a woman in a jade robe appeared before the tens of thousands of ghost tribe powerful beings. All of the ghost tribe powerful beings looked as if they had seen a ghost, and their mouths gaped open. Sect leader and Lin, the divine phoenix maiden, all of the ghost tribe powerful beings were astonished. The most renowned being on the Tai Chu continent had appeared in the opposite shore realm. He had slain heavenly gods, destroyed a heavenly Dao, and broken the heavenly gate. He was a supremely talented prodigy, and he had traveled all the way from the Kingdom of the Nine States to the opposite shore realm just to beat up the Dark Spirit King. The Dark Spirit King was completely dumbstruck, and all of its 9 heads were at a complete loss. Who am I? Where am I? Why did I provoke these people? It felt like everything that had happened today was far too surreal. Patriarch Zhu Yin hadn't appeared in the world for a long time, and as soon as he did, he brought in Lin, who had just broken the southern, heavenly gate, to beat it up. What had it done to deserve this? That's right, the Dark Spirit King had a mental breakdown in that instant.